Okay, welcome. I would like to call to order this regular meeting of the Boulder Valley Board of Education for Tuesday, February 26, 2019. Laura, would you please call the roll?
Benford. Fuqua. Garcia. Gebhardt. Marquis.
Here.
Myers. Sargent.
Here.
All right, will you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to remind everybody that the mission of the Boulder Valley School District is to create challenging, meaningful, and engaging learning opportunities so that all children thrive and are prepared for successful, civically engaged lives. Thank you so much for being here. Richard, thank you for joining us by telephone. And we're happy to have you at the Ed Center with us this evening. As always, we'll start with the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Board President Marquis, members of the board. Just a few brief comments this evening. I've had an opportunity over the past week to go out to several of our schools. On last Wednesday, I had the opportunity to go to Boulder High School. As you all know, as part of my 100-day plan, I was going to meet with every faculty. And while Boulder High may be the oldest high school in the state, it was the last meeting that I had scheduled. And so I had an opportunity to talk with their faculty, and it was a great opportunity. On Thursday, Kathy and I were able to be judges at the National History Day at Southern Hills Middle School, and just to see the talent of our kids, and I was able to see live performances and also review some of the papers and projects that the students were doing. Just really, really impressive. Just kudos to the team at Southern Hills Middle. And then thank you to the Foothills Kiwanis Club, who invited me to come speak out at 7 a.m. Monday morning and give a chance to give an update on the district, where we're going with strategic planning. It was just really a joy to be there, and so thank them for that as well. And we'd just like to reach out and thank to all the parents that have been giving us feedback, whether it's on our strategic plan forms or our school start time feedback forms. I think that folks have been able to be willing to come out and share their opinions, and certainly some of those opinions were in support, and some others that we need to consider what is being said. But just the idea that our community is engaging with us, I just truly appreciate. So that's all I have.
Okay, board members, any questions for Dr. Anderson? No? All right, so we'll go to our next item, which is public hearing and public participation. The board recognizes the value of public comment on issues related to the operation of the schools. To ensure that our meeting is conducted in an orderly manner, we ask that persons who address the board first confine your comments to matters that are germane to the business of the school district. Speakers on agenda items will be heard first, followed by those speaking to non-agenda items. Please limit your presentation to 2 minutes. If we go over the first hour, public comment will continue at the end of the meeting. And so we do have a lot of speakers tonight, so if you could please keep your comments to exactly the 2-minute limit, that would be great. Recognize that students often attend or view our meetings. Speakers' remarks, therefore, should be suitable for an audience that includes kindergarten through 12th grade students. So the board president may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant statement that is unrelated to the business of the district or inappropriate for K through 12 students. So there is a lighting system on the podium, if you're new to this, starting at green when your 2 minutes starts, turning to yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining, and turning to red at the end. When the light turns red, please wrap up your comments so that the board can hear from the maximum number of speakers. And I'll just add that if you don't finish your thoughts in the 2 minutes, you can send them via email to the board, and we do read our email, and that's perfectly appropriate as well. But just this is a way to be respectful to everyone and not to have to cut anyone off. All right, so we are going to begin with our student speakers, and we have Benjamin E.
My name is Benjamin Easton. I am in 4th grade at Ryan Elementary. Chromebooks are a little safer since this summer, but they are still not very much safe for us to use. The crazy world is we live in with violence, bullying, ads, racist stuff, guns, and more is available to us on the web. With the Chromebook, I am just 6 years old. This is not education. This is not why I want to go to school for. Please protect us students. We live at school for 7 hours per day, 5 days a week. You adults are responsible for making schools a safe place to learn math, literacy, and other learning projects, and to be friends. Please treat the Chromebooks like a textbook, and the books in our library. Thank you.
Okay, Arthur.
My name is Arthur Easton, and I'm in 3rd grade at Ryan Elementary. Students are in school to learn math, science, and literacy. Teachers should not be responsible to teach us how to use a Chromebook just because it is in our lives. Teachers are not responsible to teach us how to use a knife or matches. Yet, these are in our lives too. I will use these 3 tools in my life. I can show you now that I know how to light up a match. After all, there's a fire extinguisher over here if something goes wrong. And there are all of you adults here to supervise me and make sure I do it right. No filters, right? I can do it safely, I promise. Do you trust me? After all, I'm only 8 years old, and you believe I should be learning to be world ready. Why shouldn't we learn to cut our piece of meat or bread at the school cafeteria with a knife? Please do not give us students Chromebooks on fire, including those 6th graders. Make them 120% safe for us to be using before having the Chromebooks in school. Children's safety first. Thank you.
Okay, Diego.
My name is Diego Cordero, and I was here. So anyways, I came here to speak about some of the inappropriate content that students can access, such as Google Play Music. You can listen to music samples that are explicit, and there are no filters that remove this. If you just click on your account little circle and you press sign out, you can listen to anything. The Windows Store installed on all Windows computers is also available, and you can download games from that are rated mature, such as GTA 5 and others. Fortnite, you can look up Fortnite and you can get inappropriate results such as people shooting each other, which is in the game, but there are also other pictures that are not inside of Fortnite and are inappropriate, not for students. One of the things that someone had recently looked up on my Chromebook when I was not in the room was a Spanish swear word, and the teacher saw it, and I didn't really get in trouble, but I was annoyed, and I thought it was inappropriate that students would be able to look up curse words.
Okay. So now moving on to students on non-agenda items. Henry G.
Hello, I am Henry Graff. I'm a senior at Fairview High School. I'm here to talk about the 2019 bell schedule change, specifically the later start time. I appreciate the need for sleep in our high schools, especially with the stressful academic schedule that a lot of students have. But it's also important to realize that a 4:05 end time to the school day will create difficulties for after-school activities. My primary after-school activity throughout high school and indeed throughout middle school and elementary school, I started in 4th grade, has been Nordic skiing. And in the winter, we only usually get about 90 minutes to practice Nordic skiing on weekdays. We leave from Fairview High School at shortly after school gets out. We get to Eldora at about 4:30. We ski till about 6, which is the latest that Eldora will allow us to ski. This is already a major accommodation, seeing as 6 o'clock is after hours on the Nordic trails. Nordic skiing will be incredibly difficult. Productive training will be incredibly difficult on weekdays if we're only allowed to depart school at 4:05. Just with the long commute and the van travel and the preparation that goes into it, I would like to put before your consideration the idea that granting 8th period off to athletes who need that accommodation for training, or allowing athletes to take PE 8th period and gaining credit for spending that time at their sport. Thank you.
Thank you. Jake S.
Hello, I'm Jake Steves, and I'm also part of the Boulder Nordic Junior Racing team along with Henry. And when I found out about the schedule change, I was actually happy to know that there was going to be more time to sleep in. However, once I found out that I had to stay in school longer and I would not be able to go up and ski, it was pretty defeating because obviously I would choose skiing over sleeping in. And throughout my high school career, Nordic skiing has been a game changer for me. It's a special group of parents, coaches, and kids who all support each other. And as a senior, it might not be that hard to get 8th period off, but I want younger kids to be able to experience the same thing as me. And all the memories that I made, all the trips we have done, it's just been amazing. And I want the younger kids to be able to experience this too. So in my opinion, 8th period off for the athletes would be exceptional for our team. And if any way this is possible, that would be amazing. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're moving to agenda items, and our first speaker is Florence Bouquet.
Good evening. My name is Florence Bouquet. I have a 1st grader and 3rd grader at Ryan Elementary. So continuing on, actually, Benjamin thought, which is please treat the Chromebooks like a textbook or the books that they have in the library. This is simply following the Children's Internet Protection Act, right? A constitutional law that is installed since 2003. But where are we now? 15 years later. The internet is wilder than ever, for good and for bad. But it is our responsibility, and actually your responsibility, to protect our kids that spend 35 hours a week of their lives within the school walls. Are they learning, or are they getting hurt, traumatized, or attacked? We need filters, and we need whitelisting for the teachers and for our kids. Whitelisting is the practice to explicitly allow only specific websites, videos, and apps, whatever, and allowing whatever the teachers need for the instructions. Just like they need 5 textbooks for math, period, right? So let's allow only those links and those needs for the teachers. Whitelisting can easily be implemented on the network and will not overload the network. Whitelisting offers the solution to cybersecurity. Whitelisting is widely used in educational institutions and it's successful. Why? Because it protects our children from the various and the numerous threats. And because they're in a learning environment, they're not left to at their own discretion to experience the world from age 5 and up. How old were your children when you started trusting him or her with a knife in their hands, or with a match, or with a hammer, I mean, you name it? Why would we trust a child to do the right thing with a Chromebook on fire in their hands? Teachers don't need the World Wide Web to teach. Students don't need the World Wide Web or a knife or a match just to be a child. BUSD needs whitelisting. Thank you.
Okay, Anna Segura.
So, hello. Last week, I shared screenshots of sexually explicit and obscene lyrics that my 5th grade son told me were available on the BVSD Elementary School Network. I find it ironic that I'm not allowed to read these lyrics here at the board meeting, but they're available online in BVSD elementary schools. The FCC regulates radio and TV broadcast content. If a TV or radio station broadcasts material that's profane, indecent, obscene during daytime hours, the station is subject to a fine of hundreds of thousands of dollars and/or revocation of the station license. However, as we've repeatedly documented, in BVSD, students are exposed to online profanity, nudity, obscenity, racial slurs at schools, and there's no consequences for anyone except the students. Students are disciplined and have expressed feeling dirty after viewing inappropriate content they intentionally or unintentionally access online. BVSD filters are inadequate to prevent student exposure to inappropriate content. As experts have stated, it's impossible to filter images. Even categories that BVSD supposedly blocks, such as lingerie, are still accessible. The current blacklisting approach, where the whole internet is accessible and specific sites are blocked after going through the review process, is inefficient and ineffective. Our group has been promoting whitelisting approach in elementary school, where only approved websites requested by teachers are accessible after being reviewed by a human being and approved for use. As YouTube's failures to control children's video content have demonstrated, BVSD needs to move away from artificial intelligence and algorithms deciding what's safe for elementary school students. Exposing children to inappropriate online content is not modern, forward, or digitally savvy. It's reckless, irresponsible, and needs to stop. The FCC regulations work because there's penalties for violations and because human beings decide what's safe. Please put student safety first and implement whitelist filtering in elementary schools. Thank you.
Okay, Jennifer Kriegsman.
Advertising on Chromebooks. Dear board members, children in an educational setting should not be advertised to. There's a brilliant documentary called Consuming Kids, where the tried and true marketing method of cradle to grave is explained. Essentially, cradle to grave marketing is about hooking a consumer when they're a child, so they go on to become a lifelong consumer of a particular brand. For a marketer to gain access to children through computers is a dream come true. When our students' data is not adequately protected, they become targets for ads that are tailored to their particular interest. Google also uses this practice when they bundle products through the go-to, so as educational suite or websites like YouTube, Google Hangout, Google Docs, and so on. This common marketing practice has no business in our schools. Please ensure that advertising to our children on the Chromebooks is turned off. Thank you.
Okay, Jennifer Began. I'm sorry if I got that wrong.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Began. I have a daughter at Lafayette Elementary in 2nd grade, and I have a son who will be attending Lafayette in a few years. I deeply appreciate the revisions that have been made to the previous technology policy. I saw that online. but I fear the lack of mandate in this new policy as well, and the lack of mandate in the language. Specifically in two spots. One, with the online advertising, it's being called in the policy a distraction to learning, which I find an incredibly weak and inaccurate title to be given to online advertising. Advertising by purpose is selling. It is not informing. It is not educating. It is not in any way connected to learning. If anything, it's about learning about a product. It has no place in our children's Chromebooks. It has no place in the schools. As a former educator, I know that I was extremely purposeful and intentional with everything that I brought into my high school classroom. As an elementary school educator, I would assume the same for every single person walking the halls of every elementary school. If a teacher will not bring that material into the classroom, draw the entire class's attention to it, put it up on a board, hand it out, if there will be no discussion about that, it should not be in the classroom. It shouldn't be about a distraction. Kids need to learn how to read. They don't need to learn how to avoid distractions. They need to learn how to read what's in front of them in the context with a teacher and their peers. So if it's not going to be drawn attention to, it has no business. Moreover, the screen time language, strongly encouraging schools to report, that's not enough. You know as well as I do, schools without a mandate will not. And as a teacher, I know that it takes an extra minute or two to give how much screen time that resource I would have used in the classroom would have taken. I would have done it, I could have done it. It's doable for that thoughtful educator. You look at your resources that you're going to be teaching and using, you add on how much screen time is going to be used and required. Thank you.
Danielle Napi?
I'm not going to be that eloquent. Hi, my name is Danielle Nappy. I have two children at Lafayette Elementary, 3rd and 4th grade. And when my daughter was born in 2009, made a very conscious decision to have absolutely no screen time. It's been difficult as she's gotten older, and her brother joined her 18 months later. And we worked really, really hard. And I have to say that they probably get more screen time at school than they do at home. Don't know if I'm in the majority here, but I don't know that there should be as much screen time as there is in school. But getting back to the actual policy, I don't feel like technology is being used to supplement, but instead it's being used to take over teaching. My son has already realized that his very poor spelling skills can be fixed through spell check. And he doesn't necessarily have to work on his penmanship because he can type. And he's 8. And those aren't the skills that I want him to grow up with at this point at 8 years old. Will he learn how to use technology? Absolutely. It's everywhere. He doesn't need it all the time at 8 years old. I've read the policy, and I have to say that the policy seems like one big CYA for the district, and including the very big hold harmless paragraph at the last page. There are 10 separate sections in that policy, and 8 of those sections are regarding how my student can be held accountable and what they need to do if they come across something. But there's only one section that says how you or the district is going to protect my children when they're using this technology. And it uses very loose words like explore strategic options and reasonable steps, but it doesn't actually define how it's going to do this or what it's going to use or how it's going to protect them. I work for a major corporation, and as an adult, a 45 years old adult, I can access less than my 8 and 9-year-old can at school. So there's nothing concrete in the policy, and I just want to thank you.
Okay, TJ Cole.
Good evening. I'm Judge TJ Cole, and I am not only the founder of Boulder Prep as well as Justice High School, but I'm also the principal at Justice High School. And I'm going to go fast because I tend to preach, and that'll go longer than 2 minutes. I will begin by saying that earlier today at the Pepsi Center, Justice High School's boys basketball team won the Bronze League championship. And I also want to say that our girls won the Charter School Girls Co-League Championship. Folks, for 22 years, it's been a pleasure and an honor to work in a district where people truly care about educating our youth. I am here, our entire community is here tonight to ask for your support in achieving facility equity. Justice High takes great pride in teaching the classics in an untraditional way. We have emphasized programming and high expectation to push our students to higher success. Every single graduate from Justice High School must complete 2 college-level courses in order to graduate, and we are also the district's only GED and high-set testing center. Watching our students succeed either at Harvard or finishing dental assistant school is a testament to the commitment of our staff, our students, and you as part of this district. As you know, Justin High is often the last stop for non-traditional students. We don't have boosters, we don't have fundraisers, and for the most part, our community, we are content in just plying our craft and plodding along, and we don't worry about politics and bonds and other things. During our 22-year time frame, we have never come to the district ever to ask for any capital funding. During this time, Justice High has never received or hasn't received a lot of funding from several mill overrides that other schools have received. We have no commons area. We have to rent practice space for all our sports teams. We have one of the highest percentage of sped students in the district. In addition, I was saddened and surprised. We have a grant program where we partner with Sanchez Elementary School, and we, was that my 2 minutes?
It is.
Okay. All right. We would just ask your support in an innovative grant to improve our facilities. We're in dire need. Thank you.
Okay. Jose A.
Hi, I'm Jose Almanza, a senior at Justice High School. I'm at Justice because I couldn't get really enough attention from normal high schools. I feel like there was too much like broadened learning. While at Justice, I can be helped with a certain subject directly and get the help that I need. And I feel like Justice was just a better environment for me because the teachers are just a lot friendlier and a lot more willing to work with you, along with the students, and they're a lot more accepting of your past or wherever you may be coming from. And I'm asking for your help with facilities because it's not always pleasing or wanting, I guess, to be kind of practicing at like a local rec center or even at a local park. Even our weight rooms are just, our weights are just put into like an old cafeteria room where most of the equipment is lended from previous students or current students. Thank you.
Okay, Tori H.
You guys will have to excuse me, I'm kind of short, so, well, as you know, I'm Tori, you guys just said, but the school for me, not recently, but I started a few months back, and I came from a school where I've been told that I'm a lost cause and I won't amount to nothing because I've messed up for myself, and I can own up to that. But this school has proven to me that I'm not a lost cause, and it's a home away from home. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional, but they really have helped a lot for me, especially because things for me have been pretty hard. TJ, he's there every day in the morning to put a smile on my face, or sometimes other things, but he's a principal, that's what happens. And Izzy, he's been very much like a father figure for a lot of the students. He's been there a lot. And I feel like that funding such things for our school could help because we already don't have a lot. We are students that came from nothing and feeling nothing. So having nothing, it doesn't help. We get our education and that's great, but there's other things that I do believe we need. just because of the fact that this is a home away from home for us. This is where we get away from anything that's going on, tragedies at all. So, yes, I just believe that it would help a lot. It's not for the school, it's for the students. And these students work very hard, and they've came from very low places. But thank you.
Okay, Paloma G.
Hi, my name's Paloma. I'm a student at Justice High currently, and this funding would help us a lot just because of the way the school is built and has provided for us in the past. I do believe that the school is very underestimated because of how some certain people may look at the students there. But Justice is like Tori said, is a very close home. Like, we look at it as a home, and to see that it's not treated as fairly as other schools are is kind of disappointing, only because the teachers there, they really help us and take their own time to just like be there for certain students and just kind of work with all of us. Sorry, I'm very nervous. But I just would ask from you guys just to help us a little bit and kind of seek out attention towards us and realize that justice is really, like, sorry, I don't know how to explain it, but we just really need the support from you guys just because of how loving and caring the school is, and it just kind of hurts seeing how poorly we sometimes are treated. But if people were to get to know us, it's like it's a whole different school. All right, thank you.
Okay, Andrea F.
Hi, my name is Andrea, and I've been at Justice for 2-3 years almost, and I'd really like it if we'd get a little extra funding or something, but Justice has helped me with my truancy problems and everything, and as a cheerleader being at Justice, we really don't get a good practice space. We have to practice outside in our basketball court, and having somewhere where we could practice or something would be really helpful. And yeah, thank you.
Dustin?
Hi, I'm Dustin Weisner-Wolcott. I go to Justice High School. I've been enrolled for a little over a year now, I think. This place means a lot to me, especially considering I came from a school in Adams 12 district called Legacy High School. They have a ridiculous population of students, like thousands and thousands of children with a ratio of maybe a couple hundred teachers in the entire school. Going from that to school now where Justice, you have so much one-on-one attention, it's ridiculous. To the point where I know there, if I want something to be done in my life that will affect me in a positive way, they can make that happen. And I've made that happen before. I came there really interested in technology, so we made an entire class surrounded around Code Combat, which was a place where we decided to go to Lockheed Martin and apply for a competition, and a whole bunch of other good stuff at that school that I've gotten, extensive music and art programs that I've gotten there that they've made sure happens. They haven't gotten this for free. They figure it out on their own, and they make sure that whatever the students need happens for them. And part of this funding will help a lot. I mean, we have a piano in the weight room. I go to the weight room to play piano instead of going to an auditorium where the piano should be, because we don't have an auditorium. We have a lot of underfunded parts of the school, including bathroom. I mean, I left there today and the soap dispenser fell off the wall. There's a lot of things in that school that I feel could be fixed or at least improved for the students especially. Thank you.
Manny R.
Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Emilio, and I am a student at Justice High School. I've been going there for about a month or two, and I've been from school to school growing up in different districts in my life. And there has only been justice where the staff, the teachers at that school have communicated and connected with students in no other way that I've ever seen at any other school. And in the little amount of time that I've been there, they've done more for me than have been in other schools for years at a time. And they do so many things for the students, and like TJ and Izzy, they do so much for the students, and it comes out of their own pocket, and they do it anyway and do it anyways, and they have so much resourceful ways to do things for the students when they have such low income and such low wage payment. But they show up every day, and they have a smile on their faces, and they're happy, and they show the students enjoyment and excitement, and everybody's happy to be there, and it's like a second home for us students at that school. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, Isaiah?
Hi, my name is Isaiah Koff, and I'm a senior at Justice High School. I've been there for a little over 3 years. Justice is a great school. We're more like a family. I shouldn't even call it a school. We're a really tight-knit unit. We do great with one another, but Justice is very poverty-stricken, and we lack everything that a regular school has. We barely even have enough Chromebooks for the amount of students that we have there. Our weight room is just ridiculous. We got that about 2 years ago from a donation. And I can't even lift right because it's just so bad, you know, but we would benefit greatly from your guys' help. Thank you.
Israel?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Israel Sanchez. I am the principal of Justice High School, assistant principal. I'll be a principal one day. I'm a little bit emotional. It's great to hear from the kids. It's hard to follow up that, but I have a couple of messages. First of all, I come with you with a message of gratitude and a message of urgency. I started working with the district approximately 10 years ago as a dropout and overage undercredit interventionist. So I had the grand opportunity of working with all the high schools in the district. It was a great experience. After only 1 year, though, I felt I really needed to feel a part of a larger, more of a family net. So I chose to work for another charter school in the district, Boulder Prep. So I worked with them for 3 years. And after that, I had the great opportunity of getting an assistant principal job at Justice, and I've been doing that for the last 5 years. So point being is within the last 10 years or so, Boulder Valley has been very generous with their resources. If we ever have any needs, they're very quick to answer our necessities and to work with us to fulfill the needs of our students. So from my point of view, you folks have fulfilled the mission of excellence and equity. But unfortunately, right now I come with a sense of urgency. We only have a small amount of time with our students, and that time could be better spent if I didn't have to be unclogging toilets, fixing doors, and doing that type of work instead of working with teachers and curricula and instruction, because that's my specialty. But unfortunately, sometimes we gotta make sure that students have a place where they could feel proud of, a place where they could feel comfortable at. And I challenge you folks to support us in that endeavor. Thank you.
Did Manny just walk in? Yes. Okay, great. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Emmanuel Ramos. I'm a senior at Justice High, and I'd like to talk a little bit about why we deserve the grant. I'm 21 years old, and I just enrolled myself back in the high school because I actually have a reason to be back in high school, and that's my daughter. She's 2 years old, and I'm trying to get some certificates or, trade school or vocational, and I need a high school diploma to get into those type of schools. Well, I don't really, but I want to do it the right way, and I want to set an example for my daughter, like school is the right way to go. And I honestly think that TJ and everybody else at that school deserves it because they are really hard workers. And not only that, the students there kind of like need a better school to be at. I mean, from my first experiences there, you can't really judge a book by its cover, but that's what kind of everybody really does. And I'm pretty sure TJ and everybody would like have a lot more students there if they had a better school, reconstructed school to have. And I believe that they are in need of it and they deserve it probably more than anybody, I think, personally. But yeah, that's just what I wanted to talk about a little bit today, and hopefully you will consider it. Thank you.
Carrie White?
Good evening, Carrie White. I'm a parent of a 5th grader at University Hill Elementary School, and I will again be addressing the technology issues within the district and our schools. And coming back again, and after all these meetings with Sam, speaking with some of you at meetings individually, emails, all of that, I just don't feel like maybe my focus should be repeating all of those issues again. I am concerned that there's a vote on the technology policy tonight because it makes me concerned that after all of this work, that there really isn't this basic true understanding of what's involved. What I see in this policy is too much undefined, it's watered down, and it'll therefore be ineffective. So all of these things that we have been speaking about and working on and bringing to our schools, to the district, to everybody involved, the technology department, it just doesn't feel like it's getting there. I'm also confused by the focus and mission of the technology department. If much of these issues have been initiated and brought from parents and have had some people in this group have had to spend over 2 years working on this. I've spent over a year learning about all of this, and I'm frustrated that all these different programs and needs for training and filtering that should be a part. You guys have, or there's been a big group that has agreed unanimously that these should be part of the One2Web program, yet the Chromebooks are being released in March without it, that's gonna follow. Why is it so important to have it, but not important to have it now or when the Chromebooks are released? So tonight I'm just asking you to consider everything at a much bigger picture, and are you truly taking the approach to technology that's appropriate for the education of our children? Thank you.
Sarah Alderstein?
Good evening. I'm going to just talk about one piece of the technology policy, be a little bit specific that I want to focus on is the Google Chat aspect of it, which I don't see in the policy one way or the other. As you know, Google Chats are on each Chromebook, and when used, it's basically like a text. So if your computer is on, you'll see the message in real time pop up on your screen. When I read the proposed policy on the student use of internet, on the second page it outlines unacceptable uses of technology. The second example of this is, and I quote, no student shall access, create, transmit, retransmit, or forward material or information that is not related to district educational objectives. Google Chat is used as a social tool. In my son's case, a 6th grader at Southern Hills, this is the only use he's ever seen. I asked each of his teachers during the recent parent-teacher conferences if they used it as an educational tool, and each of them said no. Some expressing real disdain for the feature as it causes major distraction for the students during time of instruction. There are many other ways to collaborate with fellow students, such as email, which is also on each Chromebook that each student has access to. There's just no need for Google Chat, and which, whether intended or not, has become a major distraction. I would like to see it disabled. Thank you.
Okay, Anna Fernandez?
Hi. As we close our public comments, I want to read the One2Web vision from your website. We prepare students for their future. Teachers and administrators and students are continually seeking ways to improve learning experiences in and out of the classroom. Having access to information is part of creating a level playing field for all students, and putting a device in the hands of each student is a way to achieve this goal. This focus is not on the device itself, but in leveling the play field so that all have access to resources and information. I ask you, as you are discussing the use of technology, that you are committing to leveling the play field. All these vulnerabilities that we've been pointing out to you over and over the last years are gonna affect the most those children whose parents work long hours, don't have the knowledge on how to do the filtering in their own homes, and you know that you are deploying these computers without that. This is not leveling the play field. You are doing this so that it looks great that each kid has a computer, and how are they using it? Are those kids in a worse or better situation by having access to everything? You know, I ask you that when you consider the policies and all the regulations that are coming after that, those are the kids you said you wanted to do the one-to-web for. The other kids already have computers at home. Thank you.
Okay. And we have some time for non-agenda items, and we'll start with Stephanie Fries. I apologize if I have that incorrect.
I'm here tonight about the new school hours for high schools. I have two main concerns. One is that the decision appears to have been made by the school superintendent's office and the school board purposely without any communication to the community or requests for comments prior to making. It was discussed only in special meetings. One, that the minutes aren't even accessible. The second revolved mainly about busing and how that was going to affect the decision, and then the decision was just made. I learned today it was not a vote by the school board, and that's why it could be made in this special meeting. Not every decision that is made by the school board and the district warrants prior public comment, but I think there are a lot of frustrated parents because this decision was very far-reaching. Not only does it have implications on the 10,000 high school students in the district, but it also has implications on their families and the community surrounding them in respect to employment, respect to programming of off-site activities. You can say there were committees working on this 5 years ago with Ideal School Day, and there were, but again, it was a very small group of people who did not publicize their information. And as far as the sleep research and studies, those were not publicized well. Finally, I think there's a big frustration about the way it was rolled out and the 4 o'clock end time. You heard from the boys from the Nordic team how that will impact them, but not just Nordic, many other sports. It will impact students who need to work after school. So I know you're out doing your forums, and I challenge you as a school district, and specifically you, Dr. Anderson, you and your staff, to take these concerns and regain our community's trust. Do a good job with addressing these concerns, please.
Okay, Marie Clark.
Hello again, Boulder Valley School District. My name is Marie Clark. I spoke on January 22nd in favor of Ascent Charter School, and I'm here again tonight. I want to speak to you because I was present. I have 3 children in the Boulder Valley School District. They all attend Fireside. My youngest is right here. She'll be a kindergartner next year. Anyway, I was at the appeal, and I watched. It was very interesting to me, Tina and Dr. Anderson, when Angelica Schroeder, I believe her name is, recommended to you guys at the end of the meeting to please consider, is it revoking or whatever you want to call it, releasing Ascent Charter School to the State Charter Initiative. And I'm here tonight to plead with you, basically, that this is a path forward for a large group of parents and students. We are up to 675 intent to enrolls, with 50% of them, Dr. Anderson, coming from the Boulder Valley School District. It's really important to us. We are an organized and passionate group of parents, and we are not going away. I'm here tonight. I would love to not be here anymore speaking to you guys about this, but I'm here, and I will continue to email. I will continue to write letters to the editor until we get something to move forward with. And I just want to come tonight and look at you guys all again and just ask for you to please consider relinquishing us to the charter. That also includes we will not be using your mill levy dollars or my mill levy dollars, and you can give those to Justice High School. I would love to see that happen. So please consider relinquishing us to the state. Thank you.
Amira Mustian?
Good evening, BVSD board, and thank you for the opportunity for me to speak. My name is Amira Mustian, and I have lived in the Boulder area for 30 years, and I love this community. I am a parent of 3 young children, and 2 are currently enrolled in BVSD schools. I'm also a former public school teacher, and I understand firsthand the challenges that many teachers face. I wanted to take a moment this evening to speak about Ascent Classical Academy at Flatirons, and I want to share my strong disappointment in the decision to deny the school and hundreds of children the opportunity to attend a school of their choice. Your rejection of Ascent, without even giving them a chance to succeed, is not consistent with your stated values of being a district that respects diversity and fosters inclusiveness. I cannot understand why you would deny over 675 students and their families who have asked to enroll in ACAF the opportunity to choose a school that they believe is the best interest of their children. Hundreds of parents have written letters, and dozens have given public comment for Ascent. This being said, Ms. Schroeder, she recommended on February 14th at the appeal to many of us and to Dr. Anderson that you guys consider relinquishing Ascent to the state authorizer CSI. I believe this is a very reasonable recommendation, and there's simply no downside for the district to disapprove or to approve this. By following this recommendation, you will be giving parents and children the choice that they have been desperately asking for. By following this recommendation, you will demonstrate that BVSD is truly an inclusive district and a district that listens to parents and values diversity. By following this recommendation, you will provide choice and opportunity for all children to thrive. So I'm asking, as a parent, as a member of your community, and as a former teacher, that you please relinquish ACAF to CSI and give families the choice and opportunity they deserve. Thank you.
Okay, Mary Jo Tinlin?
Hello, I'm Mary Jo Tinlin. I live in Superior, and I have 3 kids in BVSD. I spoke on January 8th. I attended the 22nd meeting. I participated in the February 7th listening session, and I attended the February 14th State Board of Education meeting where Chairwoman Schroeder did recommend that you release Ascent Classical Academy to the Charter School Initiative. And my family, my entire family, asks you to please do this. It is a win-win situation. It gets Ascent out of your hair. It doesn't affect your mill levy funding, and it gives hundreds of families the replication school that they want. At the listening session, the consensus of everyone there, except for one person, was that we want Ascent, specifically Ascent, not a watered-down version, and slap a classical label on it. Ascent's curriculum is proven pedagogy in 20 schools across the country. It's not a cobbled-together mismatch. By releasing this school as soon as possible to the CSI, you give hope to hundreds and hundreds of families. My family and I plead with you to take this into consideration and to put it on the agenda for a meeting, the next agenda if possible. As it was stated, there's 50% of the families live in the district that filled out an intent to enroll, and we just absolutely ask you, please let us have this school. Thank you.
Brenda Jones?
Hello, my name is Brenda Jones. Last year, I spoke to an assistant superintendent about our daughter and the curriculum at our local elementary school. I sent her an email per her request. Our daughter had a difficult time learning, retaining information, and did not make progress the entire year. I didn't receive a response back. We decided to enroll her in a private school. She went from only being able to recognize a handful of letters to reading on her own in 4 months. She does not have a learning disability. She just needed the right environment and curriculum, one that BVSD does not currently provide. This year, our son completed 2 self-evaluations at the neighborhood school in which he explicitly stated he does not feel challenged and feels he does not have a voice. Let that sink in. Our 9-year-old son feels he does not have a voice in his classroom with his teacher. On February 14th, I listened to Superintendent Anderson, Board Member Marquise, and Attorney Tom state the main concern with ACA is its governance model and the lack of influence parents would have in the school. They expressed that when a family leaves a school, it is because they are fed up and feel there's no other solution. That leaving shouldn't be the family's only option when dissatisfied with the school, teacher, or curriculum. However, that is exactly what happened with us and our daughter, because we as parents did not have any power, influence, nor meaningful voice in BVSD. Tom posed this question, and I'm quoting, "I wonder what they would say if they had issues with the school and all of a sudden they realize they have no power to make any changes." I had that very realization, not as an assent parent, but as a BVSD parent. Where is my voice in BVSD? Where is my power to make changes? Where is my son's voice? In January, I asked you to provide a solution by approving the application of ACA. You denied me that choice. You denied hundreds of BVSD families the power to make a change and have a voice in your district. Instead, you offered to learn what classical education means in an attempt to meet that need without assent. But you failed to show a path for this when questioned by a state board member. We told you what we want. We want Ascent Classical Academy and their proven model as an option. I ask you to please listen to my voice and the hundreds of BVSD parents who want ACA to open in Flatirons area this fall. I am begging you to please follow Chairwoman Schroeder's recommendation to relinquish ACA. Thank you.
Okay, Beth Egan, who was given 2 minutes from C. Martins.
Good evening. My name is Beth Egan. I'm a parent at Fairview High School. I'm also a board member of Boulder Nordic Junior Racing Team. You heard from 2 of our athletes earlier. We did send the board a letter today expressing our concerns about the late end of the day. We're not concerned about the late start. We appreciate the reasons that Boulder Valley is deciding to start later based on the research. I do want to echo, though, that we share the frustration expressed earlier with the process. You're starting to roll out something that was announced in January for next fall that impacts our students right now. They are selecting their classes in high school. They are given a notice saying that under, penalty of death practically, if they decide to change their classes, they won't be able to. And there's no solution for the myriad of after-school programs. There's certainly no solution for all of the athletes that are going to be impacted by this. And it's not simply one niche club sport. It impacts us a lot because of daylight concerns. But it's all of the athletes in Boulder Valley who are now going to be getting home later. Their practice times are going to all be later. That means that this precious half hour of sleep is actually not going to happen because they're just going to go to bed later. We would really like to be part of a solution, but we need a solution sooner than gathering a lot of complaints at input sessions. And we need a solution that's going to work for our kids as of fall 2019. So we've proposed a couple that we think would work that you could implement now while you're looking at solutions. Guarantee that all kids who have after-school activities or commitments can request 8th period off, and it'll be granted. I know, because I've heard the discussions at our high school, that scheduling is incredibly complicated. If those requests aren't in now, they're not going to be able to be granted for the fall. They have to build a schedule that takes into account the number of students who need to get out earlier. Or you could do an 8th period PE option, which other school districts do, or you could implement a 30-minute lunch. The students seem to favor that from all that I've heard, and let everyone get out at the same time. So start school later, end school at the same time that it's ending now. So I'm really here, in addition to giving the written input on behalf of our own club, to say there is urgency around this. And there is a lot of lack of trust in the community that Boulder Valley is going to come up with a solution, and that we're not just going to be hundreds of parents going in pleading for our own kids' case, which I think is very inequitable, frankly. It means that then the people who complain the most will get a solution for their own kids and their own kids' activities. And we think you really need to be rolling out a solution now before all high schoolers are locked into their schedule. And if you can't roll out a permanent solution, a temporary solution, and we need really clear communication from you all that this will happen. Our organization, we enter into contracts, people start, we're a nonprofit, but we have to pay coaches. We have to know that we can enter into a contract to have practices and have people sign up for our program. And that starts happening. We actually do that starting in April. And we're no different than any other it's orchestra, whatever the after-school program is that kids are involved in. And then one last thing I'd like to say is I definitely appreciate, as a mom of 3 boys, the need for sleep. They will sleep more when they are happy and they have gotten exercise and when they're doing activities that they love to do. And I just don't think you all considered that enough. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Hold on one sec. We have 8 more. Do we want to stop now and do it after, or can everyone for 8 more?
I would.
We're at the hour.
I'd like to hear everybody.
You want to go through 8 more? Everyone?
I
Okay.
would move that we suspend the rules and continue.
Okay. Everyone okay with that? All right, Erica Fagan. There we are.
Hi, thank you. I'm here also to talk about the Bell schedule for 2019. I'm a mother of 3 children, all enrolled in BVSD schools, elementary, middle, and high, and I'm proud to be a part of the BVSD community for its forward thinking of possibly implementing a later start time for teenagers. However, I do have some concerns about how this might affect high school students who are involved in after-school athletics and club sports. My son and daughter are both members of the Boulder Nordic Junior Racing Team. The 4:05 p.m. end to school day will affect their ability to practice and could ultimately lead to the dissolution of the team. This would be devastating to my son and all the other athletes. This late release time will not only affect the 60-plus Boulder Nordic Junior Racing Team members, but the other 1,000-plus students that look forward to their after-school activities as part of their overall health and development. Many studies show that team sports benefit students physically as well as mentally while creating leadership skills and the ability to work as a group. Sometimes these clubs are the only places students can shine and showcase these life-changing skills. There are solutions that were just stated before. BVSD is a leader in innovation, so I really sincerely hope that you will commit to a solution for this problem in a timely manner before people choose their schedules in order to help our students' populations thrive, both inside school as well as outside. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, Pam Ferrone.
Hello, I'm here to ask you to please follow the urging of Angelica Schroeder, the Colorado State Board of Education Chair, and follow the precedent that has been set to relinquish Ascent Classical Academy to CSI. I was raised here in Boulder. I'm a Fairview High School graduate. My mother was a teacher in this district for 25 years. And while Boulder Valley schools are superior, they're not a fit for everyone. And by that I mean my son. He's smart. He needs this classical education. He has toured at the Ascent schools, and he has shadowed there, and he has thrived there. That's why we need them here. After being denied twice by this district, we started to applying to the other Ascent schools, and because we know it works. You have emailed us, and you've told us that you care, and I really hope that that is sincere. Because if you will not release Ascent to CSI, our family is going to be forced to move. We've been accepted into the Ascent Douglas for next year. I'm very saddened to leave my home. Our family moved to Boulder in 1970, and this is home. And my son will be leaving his grandparents and his aunts and his uncles, and he will be leaving his friends. He'll be leaving his karate dojo. He's going to be severing relationships that he has built his whole life. This is an awful decision to have to make as a parent, especially as my parents are aging and I want to be close to them. But his school choice, where he's going to spend the majority of his time, is the most important thing to him. And if it means me moving, I will move. But I'm going to ask you, beg you, please release us to CSI so we can just get on with this and have our school, and you can satisfy the 75 kids that want this school. Please do it. If there's no harm done to BVSD, you can have our tax dollars. Just give us our school, please.
Beth Paulson?
Good evening, I'm Beth Paulson. You've heard from me before in both writing and in person. You know, I really have to say I'm very disappointed in some of you. I just saw you, Kitty, roll your eyes at this woman who spoke a few minutes ago, Dr. Anderson, on the night of the vote. You wouldn't look up during some of the public comments. It's very disappointing. Your attitudes, facial expressions, we have come to you, have implored you to give us our school. We want Ascent Classical Academy. My son is here again, I'm here again, we're all here where we don't really want to be, at a school board meeting, over and over and over, asking you for a school. 675 intents to enroll. That number would dramatically increase if we even had a site, if we even had a location. Would you just, I don't understand. It just makes absolutely no sense. The people who come against our school, we've negated them. What remains is a choice. The choice is you as a board say you want to support us, that you're listening. You send out your assistants to have these meetings after you've denied us, and then you want to act like or look like on the outside that you're listening, but it's not true. You're not listening. We have said we want Ascent Classical Academy. We want it this fall. My son is a freshman in high school, and if it doesn't happen this fall, he will be left out. He'll be left behind. He'll be marginalized. It's a word everybody wants to throw around. He's left out, and it just makes no sense. I just would love to see you as a board be a body that actually does represent us, the children and families in Boulder Valley. Release us to the CSI. You don't have to see me again. You can have your mill levy money. It makes sense. I'm just saying please. Release us to the CSI.
Tina Larter? Mark?
Good evening, Superintendent, and ladies and gentlemen of the board. Thanks for hearing me. So I'm a father of 2 BVSD students. One's a middle schooler, but he attends some classes at Boulder High School first thing in the morning, and then our daughter is at Boulder High. My wife couldn't be here, Tina, because she's at the swim team banquet with our daughter. Our son is at Nordic practice. Our kids are dedicated students. They're successful in the classroom and outside. But we think a big part of their success is their ability to explore other activities like sports, like exercise. They both played in the orchestra. Madison still does. I guess that for me, this late start idea, it makes a lot of sense to give teenagers the opportunity to sleep in. At the same time, the way the decision was made, or it appears to have been made, or the way I found out about the decision, it feels like a really last-minute cobbled together thing, and it does, as you've heard, affect a lot of people, not just Nordic skiers. I think the Nordic skiers have to do a tremendous job of managing their time and managing their commitments. I think you'd find that they're some of the most accomplished academics in the district. It probably goes hand in hand. It's probably not a coincidence, but you've heard that our community, and I think all the communities, will make the sacrifices they have to make so that students can take advantage of late start. But if we could do something about that late end that will let them continue to participate in everything else that's important to them and that's important to their educations, we'd really appreciate your consideration to that. Thanks very much.
Jane Wallingford Brooks.
Good evening. I am another Boulder Nordic mother. I echo what my co-parents have said. I'm also a daughter of an educator. My mom taught in Denver for 33 years and talked my whole childhood about how kids need sleep, kids need sleep. I get it. My teenage boy needs it desperately as well. However, I wish that in this era of surveys, when you can't stay in a hotel or buy anything without getting a request for a survey, I wish we had been asked, because this community has a lot of creative ideas, and we're willing here and now to share with you and come up with these solutions, since the process did not involve us along the way. I'm a board member as well. I'm a lawyer. Transparency is everything, and I'm not here to chastise, but just to say, let's talk. Let's all of us figure this out, especially for the kids. In one of the emails inviting us to the community forums that are happening at the high schools, there was the words from Margaret Crespo saying, the intention is providing students with as much flexibility as possible to meet their needs and interests. And that's really what it's all about. Whether it's a Nordic kid, a musician, an artist, somebody who loves their afternoon volunteering, these kids need to be well-rounded. We know they're driven. We know they're going to get it all done. So please, let's come up with a solution, as Beth and others have said, now, quickly. They're signing up for their classes this week for next year. So we're ready and willing to talk. Thank you very much.
Christina Weber.
Hi, I'm here to ensure that all athletes are able to be done with school by 3:30 next year and the future years. I'm the mother of 2 Boulder High students that have skied on Boulder Nordic Junior Racing Team, another Nordic skiers, for 8 years and has shaped their lives. I am here to represent the Boulder Nordic Junior Racing Team to ensure that the team continues to practice and train on even fields so as to be able to compete nationally. This requires them to be done with school at 3:30. There's no flexibility in that. They take the bus to Eldora, which takes 40 minutes. They have to get ready, they train. The later they ski in darkness. Coaches cannot adequately work on technique and adjust skiers if they cannot see them. Putting aside the competitive nature aspect of the sport, Nordic skiing should continue to be available for students as a sport. We live in Colorado, and skiing is a big, part of the community and a special form of exercise. The benefits include healthy exercise, outside in the woods, breathing fresh air. This team sport also allows for social interaction outside of school walls. The skiers make friendships with other students from other local schools. It is a healthy choice and a lifetime skill that you can share with your family. The Boulder Nordic Junior Racing Team is well recognized in the state of Colorado and well respected, competing against all other ski teams from Aspenvale, Steamboat, Durango, Frisco. Please give these athletes and all the other athletes with the same time constraints the privilege of ending school at 3:30 so they can continue to feed their brains with something they love. It's very important, and they're all very passionate about it, so thank you.
Okay, I think that concludes public participation, and thank you all for being here. Our next segment is board communication. So any board members, would you like to start? Okay, Donna.
Thank you all for coming out. It was, this is always the best part of the meeting for me, because I hear from you. I not only read every email, I try to respond to most of them. Sometimes I can't respond to all of them because I feel like I'm too much copying and pasting. I think it's important for our community to connect rather than isolate. What I appreciate tonight on the people coming out for technology or school start times is they also offer solutions. And solutions are a time for us to work together, to hear your concerns, and to try to work through those solutions. Also, I appreciate the Justice High kids and they're gone now, and our little elementary guys that stood up on their platform to talk, that's very impressive for me. For the people that came out about assent, I hear you, and I think I read parts of the book from Kelly Leonard on yes and I think that we have a yes in this, that yes, we denied the application, but I think there should be an and. We heard the outcome 3-3, that's a close vote, one person recused themselves. We heard Angela Schroeder recommend that, and listening to her wise counsel, that we consider relinquishing this school to CSI. I think we can come together. Theodore Roosevelt has this great quote about the people in the arena, and you guys are in the arena. You're there. It's not the critics that count. It's those people out there fighting for what they want. And I think that I would like to see this board put this on the next agenda so that you're not sitting there begging us to put it on the agenda, and you can have an answer. Thank you.
Okay, other board members? Sam, Shelley? No? Is that it?
I'll go.
Okay.
I'd like to join Donna in thanking everybody for coming, the parents and the students. I know that the reason the Justice High students aren't here anymore is they had tickets to the Nuggets game tonight. And so they were down at the Pepsi Center, drove up here to talk to us, and turned around and went back. So I hope the Nuggets win, and I hope they have a good time. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming and providing your comments. I joined Donna in really respecting the community members for taking time out of your busy lives to come and share your comments and perspectives with us. It's really important that we hear what's going on. At some point, I need a better understanding, because this wasn't when I was on the board, to understand a little better, but my understanding was there was a lot of public process around the early start times. And I do remember being at a district parent community meeting where they said, don't come back to us anymore, because we've talked about this forever. And so I do think we need to figure out the best way to implement it, but I do think there was process before, but I get that people come in and out of the schools and come in and out of understanding how it impacts you and come in and out of different reasons for knowing what's going on. And so I don't know that I have a full understanding of that at all, but it might be helpful to talk sometime about what happened before, so we can if we've lost faith with the community, I apologize. I'm hoping that we can do something to help restore some of that in the way we go forward. And then I just want to do a quick invite, and maybe we'll talk about this during the legislative agenda, but the CASB Winter Conference is coming up, and the speakers that we have will be really helpful for people to come if they want to learn more about the budget. We've got members of the Joint Budget Committee coming. We have Dave Young, who is the current state treasurer, coming, and then on Friday morning we have Speaker Casey Becker coming, all talking about different aspects of what's going on in the state budget, and will have potentially significant impacts on our budgets going forward. So it's not too late for people to register, and I'll give a full, we also have the delegate assembly coming up where we'll talk about the mill levy equalization. So thanks to everybody, and hope that I'll see a few of you at the CASB meeting this week. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody, for coming out, particularly for the constructive ideas on how to solve many of the concerns you've raised. We appreciate it very much, especially the students, the parents as well. Dr. Anderson, when will the board see the results of the community input sessions around start times and any proposed solutions to some of the logistical challenges raised here tonight about the end times?
As soon as the forms are finished up, we're going to get that information, then we'll get that either to you this Friday or next Friday.
Okay.
Very sensitive to some of the points that were brought up and the timeliness of solutions that were needed, and so we're going to make sure that we pay attention to that.
Thank you. And thanks again, parents, for coming out. Thanks also to Principal John Kimley, who hosted Kathy and I at Coal Creek Elementary. That was a very interesting visit to see one of our longtime neighborhood schools in action.
Richard, did you have anything to say?
Yes, I want to thank everybody that showed up tonight to speak and address some of the issues that we have to deal with. I want to focus my attention very, very much specifically to Justice High. I think Justice High came in with the request, and I think we should start thinking about how we can honor that particular request. It's not easy to run a charter school like Justice High. It's probably one of the most difficult schools to even administer. The facilities, I've been in those facilities time and time again, and they need some support and some help, let me tell you. We've done a lot of great things for other schools. We built a brand new school up in Columbine to attract people back into the community. We've done that. People are very proud of their facility. We've done the same thing at Creekside. People are very proud of that particular school. And I think we need to do something for Justice High so that they can also be proud of their particular school. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Kitty, or, yeah?
I also want to thank everybody who came out. It's clear that you are all passionate about the things that you're talking to us about, and I, like Donna, I like seeing that, and I like hearing from you all, especially to the students who came and spoke. And I wanted to talk about Justice High. That is a school that has a really awful facility, and I do hope we can do something for them, because our kids who are facing the biggest challenges are going to a school that just in terms of facility is inadequate. And I think that sends a message to them, and I'd like to send a better message if we could. I also want to say I apologize if I appeared disrespectful to anybody. That was not my intent, and so I apologize about that.
Shelley, anything?
So I want to thank everyone for coming tonight too. I'll just talk a minute about bell times. As a mom of 2 kids that had a lot of after-school activities, I really understand the concerns that parents have. And I just would be really surprised if Rob and the staff weren't working hard to find a solution to that issue of that late day compression that goes on. So I'm happy to hear that you're planning to come with some recommendations soon about that. So I have a lot of confidence that the district will find a solution to this issue. As far as assent, I want to thank the parents who came to speak about that. I think no matter how individual board members feel about it, I think we do owe the community a conversation about releasing to CSI, and so I would recommend as well that we get that on the agenda for a future meeting. As for Justice High, I understand there are needs there just like there are throughout the district, but I'm just a little confused about what the ask is based on our work session where we talked about this last time. And also we have something on the consent agenda tonight. So I just need more understanding of where we are in that whole topic, because I thought we had resolved that at the last work session. And then as far as Chromebook protections, first of all, I just want to thank this staff, the BVSD staff, for all the efforts they've made to resolve the technology issues that parents have brought forward. Although it may not seem like we've done everything, there is just huge improvement from where we've been. And I know that Rob and I have had conversations, and I know that he believes that he's not finished on this topic, that he's not where the district wants to be, and that he wants to continue working with all of the parents. So, and I believe that he will do that. Having said that, I definitely hear you. This is one of my main concerns right now in the district, and I do believe that there's more we need to do with this policy. I don't really think it protects our children the way it needs to. I think there's more to do with regard to filtering, whitelisting, Google Chat, advertising, screen time, and I would really like to see if we can get further along with this policy before we approve it. And I also think the point about how our most disadvantaged kids are impacted by the lack of these protections is a really good point and a very real concern. And it's not just because of the lack of protections and how it might affect them, but just also because of what we know about how kids don't retain as much when they learn digitally. They don't retain as much when they read. They don't do as well in math. And I feel like whereas some of our more privileged kids have supports in place that can kind of counterbalance that our more underrepresented kids do not have that, and they're reliant on learning that way. And I think that if one of our strategic objectives is really to reduce those disparities between those groups, then I'm not sure we're setting up our most disadvantaged kids to be successful if we're relying so much on digital learning. So as far as I know, there's no rush to approve this, and I would really recommend we delay approval until we reach consensus, or just get a little bit further with the policy, and do more to protect our students. So that's it. Thanks.
Okay, so with that, we'll go on to our next item unless anybody needs a break. Is everyone good? All right, you want a break? Yeah, okay, and we'll take a.
Maybe a little later.
Oh, okay, can we put it off for 10 minutes? Okay. Let's go with the legislative update. So we have this item on, and we're in the legislative session right now. Just a couple things that I'm looking at. The first was there's a bill that was introduced around convening a working group for understanding or making recommendations around the identification of dyslexia through, I think, screeners that could also be used in compliance with the READ Act. So I was talking to Rob, and I have asked if staff could weigh in on that bill. I haven't seen from a bill tracker, I haven't seen how people are weighing in on that bill yet. So that's one thing I was interested in. Did you have something to say, or?
So certainly, our staff will take a look at that and see where that's at. We haven't weighed in officially on that, but we'll get together with Sam on that. At our last work session, board members were wanting to know more about kind of what was coming out of the joint budget committee in regards to property tax and education and equity in the Colorado school finance system. And so I have Bill. We sent something to you all on Friday to review. I have Bill here who's prepared to go through some of the highlights of that if folks feel like that would be helpful.
Yeah.
All right. Good evening. So what this is about 20, not about, exactly 20 of the 30 slides that were in the presentation that was sent out. So let me get this full screen. So to be clear, as this is titled, this is not my presentation. This is one that was put together by Craig Harper. He's the Chief Legislative Analyst who works with school finance at the Legislative Joint Budget Committee and the legislative staff. So I will do my best to walk through this and point out some of the highlights. This is not intended to be an advocacy for the points in this, but just trying to inform folks and the audience as well. This may not be something that people are attuned into, but it's certainly on the forefront of the legislative agenda. So the Joint Budget Committee, the JBC, has talked about and started to draft bills around a uniform mill levy and override equalization. So this is about statewide tax policy. It does sort of wind itself up in school finance and has the potential to increase funding for school finance, but is not necessarily absolutely going to result in that. And then on the override equalization, the intent really is to help districts with low property values on a per pupil basis increase some of the equity around mill levy overrides, and it has to do with how questions are asked, and some of the graphs that are in here will highlight the situation. So Boulder was not included in this presentation. Some of the districts that are included in here really highlight some of the disparity that is occurring within the state. So again, this is really a state level look at this. So this idea of a statutory proposal for a uniform mill levy. So there is language that was in the 1988 School Finance Act. So I just wanted to read this real quick because it helps point to why this is such a topic of discussion. So again, it's from 1988, so the previous School Finance Act to the 1994 version. But some of the points that are in here, so this legislative declaration, establish a financial base of support for public education that is adequate for the delivery of educational services to children enrolled in the public schools. Moving towards a uniform property tax levy for the support of public education. Oops. And that its goal is to move toward a 50% state share of the program as quickly as is practicable in light of state financial constraints. That was 1988, all right? So obviously things haven't changed too much since then. So what this does is, because it's statutory, it's not a statewide vote, so this allows the legislature to undertake some tax policy practice, which they have not had the opportunity to practice in much since 1992, with the passage of the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. So this sets a uniform mill levy, and there are a couple of different proposals that I'll speak to. So one of them is to set a uniform mill levy at 27 mills. And what this does is, that is the current maximum mill that is levied for the total program, general fund, funding with property tax. This would allow districts to ask the question locally to generate those additional dollars between what they're currently levying and that 27 mills. So for Boulder in particular, we're currently at 25 mills, so that extra 2 mills we would be requested, I guess is the right way to put it, to go ask our local voters to raise their taxes at the local level to fund that additional 2 mills, which generates about $15 million. So if a district is fully funded at something less than that statewide levy, it would allow the district to, again, ask that question of the local voters and move up to that amount, but also then float to make sure that that mill levy changes a little bit year to year as to stay with fully funding the local district at that lower mill amount as assessed value changes and as the impacts of Gallagher are felt within the residential property taxes. So again, because it's statutory, the legislature can just do it. It's not a statewide vote, so it's each district would be doing this on its own. And then whether those dollars actually go back into school finance, that's one of the questions that is on the table. So this really is about taxpayer equity across the state. School finance it's kind of unique in that it's a statewide system with each local district having the input on the local property tax. And again, some of the charts that are in here really point this out. So this slide here is showing what the current statewide median home price, $350,000 almost, in these particular school districts, what the mill in each of those districts that is levied, what is generated, and also what the percent of the state share funding for that district is. So the particularly interesting one here being Garfield 16 at 2.2 mills. So the statewide average home value in that district pays $56 in property tax mills based on the School Finance Act in that district. And the district is backfilled 86% of that local funding just because of the way everything has sort of fallen into place over the last 30 years of this. Just to point out, Boulder, again, 25 mills, 25.023. So we're kind of right between Adams County 14 and Denver. So we're sort of in that ballpark. But we do generate about 70 to 73% of our funding locally, both from property tax and specific ownership tax. So we are a bit of an outlier in this from a big district standpoint. So this map of Colorado shows the assessed value on a per pupil basis. So Boulder Valley is in the, we'll call that the next to highest blue, not the royal blue, maybe teal, at about 215,000 of AV per pupil. But you can see where that is concentrated in some areas. Some of the areas heavy in oil and gas will really drive up that. The areas that are less populated will also drive up that per pupil AV. And if you see in the highlighted in the royal blue there, there's one district that has almost $3.2 million per pupil in AV just because of don't have many students in that district, but and also high property value wealth. So this is graph shows those same districts and what it would take to fully fund the local district based on the assessed value, how many mills it would take to fully fund it. So you can see Denver would need to be almost 50 mills to fully fund, whereas Clear Creek would fully fund at just under 17 mills. So again, very different across the state, and this has to do with the population, how large the district is, what that property value wealth is, both residential and non-residential, and then also oil and gas being a big component of this as well. So this chart just sort of lays out the timeline of how these intersecting statutory and constitutional changes have sort of played into this. So again, that 1988 School Finance Act, as I was reading, initiated that amount of the 50-50 split in an effort to set a base and maintain a base. The uniform mill levy in 1991 that was at 40 mills. So there were a few districts that weren't at 40 because they were fully funded at lower amount, but Boulder, I believe, was at that 40 back in that point in time. So then when Tabor went in place and assessed values started going up and student counts and what happened in each district, whether what district was growing in property value or students, really started to drive those mill levies down, and they didn't float back up. And then in 2007, all the mill levies were frozen where they were at that point in time. So our mill levy has been 25.023 since 2007. The lowest in the state is like 1.6 mills, and I think that's the next example coming up. So Primero here, this really shows what happens in a district as the AV started to climb and the mill levy dropped until the point at which it was frozen. But then as the AV continued to climb, the mills weren't allowed to move at all. And then when it dropped, again, it stayed the same. Something to point out, though, Primero has 186 students in it, so it is a very small district. But that 100 million in AV is about 550,000 per pupil in assessed value. And again, at Boulder is about 212 in AV. But this graph really shows how that mill levy dropped. They were at 40, they're now at 1 point, whatever. And the total assessed value in a district really can change over time. A lot of that has to do with the sort of mineral and oil and gas that occurs in specific districts. So this also shows the growth in the state share from when that mill levy was frozen, and even as the AV continued to climb and was particularly high, then the state started to backfill and they weren't generating any more dollars out of those local mills. So this is a graph that just shows all the school districts and the total program mills across the state. So again, Primero 1.68 is what it was, and then all the way up to the maximum of 27. And you can kind of see the I-25 corridor being where a lot of those districts that are at that maximum mill levy amount or the upper end of that are, as well as out through the I-76 corridor. So it is heavily concentrated around areas that are more populated. So this is a interesting slide because it shows El Paso County, which is curious in the sense that it has 14 school districts within it. So, and each school district has, except for the 3 that are maxed out, different mill levies associated with their total program funding. And this all has to do with which districts grew or did not grow at any particular time. But that is curious from a statewide tax policy standpoint, that a single county that would be the largest school district in the state if it was a single school district has these different mill levies spread across within the districts. This again just shows the difference of where districts are to what that maximum would be. This is the non-residential impact. So this is again an average property value, $350,000, and how much different the impact is to the non-residential or business property owner. So Garfield with the low mills, $226 on that average amount versus more than 10 times that in some of the other districts. So again, this is just showing that median home price impact on those mills along with the state share. So this is the statutory proposal that's been talked about. We don't have bill language to react to yet. It is being drafted, but it has not been released yet. So again, this puts a uniform mill in place, allows the district to go ask for that difference. There's lots of questions about how quickly a district would need to get to that maximum amount, what kind of backfill there might be. And an interesting question is what happens if a district doesn't pass? So the question gets put out to a district to raise their mills by some amount locally, and they vote no, and they then don't fund their local district at what the state is saying is the uniform amount that it should be. So there's some interesting legal questions, I think, that are there. These are the big outstanding questions. So there's another, the 2 proposals, one being setting it at 27 mills, which would actually generate about $450 million additional dollars. Whether that goes back into K-12 or not is a question. If it was set at 22.6 mills, which would generate the current amount of funding, so Boulder would drop a little bit. Those are kind of the 2 proposals on the table is should it be fixed at the amount that would generate the current amount of money, or should it generate additional dollars? This idea of how the local, the mill levies for the total program funding and overrides interact. So it's a little bit of an easier question for your local voters if you only have 1.68 or 2.2 mills in property tax funding for K-12 to go to your voters and ask for some additional revenue than it is if you're at in a district that is already maxed out in those high 20s. So again, 2 things that the JBC is considering, and there's the note at the bottom that the JBC has approved drafting those bills, but hasn't looked at any drafts yet. And that's it. Questions?
Thank you.
That was a lot.
Kitty has too many questions, is what she just said. All right, anyone want to start with questions? Kitty, do you want to start? No. Okay. Donna?
I don't have any questions because there's a lot of what-if scenarios, and so I have to wait until those are answered before, because it seems there were questions as you went along, but you answered them by saying, we'll have to wait and see.
I'll have a question. You're participating in these meetings where they're talking about this formula?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, as always, we need to advocate for our district and make sure we come out whole, more or less, and hoping that other districts get more funding as well. Do we see any risk at this point that's glaring of BVSD declining in its funding?
Well, So if the question is, or the proposal is to set the mills at 27, so we would increase our mills potentially, and the generated dollars statewide, because it's not just us, statewide would remain in K-12, that would certainly benefit us. That's what, 2/3 of the current budget stabilization factor at $450 million. So that's definitely a benefit. At 2 mills and 15 million, the chart that was attached that the JBC put together for all the districts in the state, Cherry Creek is at 55 million. Eagle County, which is a decidedly smaller district than us, is about 23 million that they would have to generate locally. So there are some significant impacts in other districts that are impacted way more than Boulder is. Now, there's a lot of, again, unique reasons in each of those districts why that's the case. So if the proposal was make it 27 and you can go ask your local voters, and we're going to put the money back into the current School Finance Act, it's a whole nother question about whether the School Finance Act gets changed on how the money is distributed, then we would benefit to the tune of about $15 million locally. So what we would ask for from the voters would actually kind of come right back to us. So it's kind of a win. St. Vrain generates about the same amount of money because we're at almost the same mills, right around 25. They would go to 27, but because they have lower property values than in our half of Boulder County, it generates about half as much money. Therefore, the state would backfill, so they would actually get a 2-to-1 payment on what they generated locally. So that's kind of a benefit for them. But again, that 55 million generated in Cherry Creek, they do not get 55 million out of it. That's because their current mills are at about 20 because they never debruced. So their mills have lowered where everybody else was frozen. Theirs have lowered in those years. So.
And then on the formula that decides allocation, for instance, for at-risk kids, does that change in this new scenario, or how
This scenario has nothing to do with how the dollars are distributed.
Okay.
This is only how revenue is generated.
Okay, and then has anyone mentioned CSI schools and how they get worked into that formula?
Under this scenario, the CSI schools would be funded through the School Finance Act just like they are now. The negative factor would be reduced overall by that $450 million, and because they don't have any of those local taxes, they're all funded through the state, then they would see whatever that increase is.
And then finally, is the idea that local districts are in control of local dollars, is that still the basic thinking, or do you feel local districts becoming less influential in this new scenario?
There's no change in how much control we currently have. How's that for a non-answer?
It's all right. Nothing glaring.
Nothing glaring. Yeah.
All right, those were my main questions. Anyone else?
I have a process question. We sent out to the board the resolution that's going to be in front of the delegate assembly, and to your point, Donna, since there won't be specifics, it's mostly guidelines. And so I'm just wondering how I get guidance as to what the board wants to have happen at the delegate assembly, because it's not listed as an action item, so I don't know, Madam President, what we should do.
So, I mean, we can, and just backing up, there's this delegation, it's this Thursday, right? Kathy's president at CASB, she's actually gonna be running the meeting, but she's also gonna be voting. And she will be representing our interests as CASB comes up with its own recommendation to then feed into the finance group. Is that a good, okay. So, I mean, I think our legislative platform has a lot of guidance about funding, that we want to be able to ask for overrides for bonds, that we want local control over our funding. And those are the basic guidelines. I imagine also, to borrow Ken DeLay's words from the CASB convention, if we're on the menu, I would hope that we can work with, get off the menu if possible, but we really do want to help other districts at some point.
Well, that's kind of what I thought, is our legislative platform covers a lot of this because it's still so broad. And because we don't know what kind of amendments there'll be from the floor, I'd be happy to report back, but I would just stick with the resolution, and the guidelines in the resolution is and our legislative platform as my guideposts, if that's.
Does that sound okay with everybody? Yep, Sam, Shelley, any thoughts? No. Katie?
Okay, thanks. That was my only question.
Okay. Any other questions for Bill? Any other what-if scenarios? Okay, it looks like we've had enough of the unknown, and this was great, and thank you for the update.
And certainly, as any information comes along, proposed bill drafts or whatnot, we'll certainly share that out and have another conversation about it.
Okay, and if it gets to a point where there's last-minute testifying, let us know. March 1st is Friday, and I think the legislative session ends on May 25th.
Ooh, May 4th?
May 4th?
Yeah, it's early this year.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so this is, 8 weeks. So I'm certainly checking Bill Tracker more frequently. So thank you.
All right.
And the other bill I'm watching is the CSI Mill Levy Equalization Fund. There is a bill introduced by Kathy Kipp to eliminate it, and my personal belief is that if we were to start taking money out of the operating fund from all 170 whatever districts, we should let that money be available to all schools, but in particular the schools with the highest needs and districts that maybe haven't passed mill levies. The CSI Mill Levy Equalization Fund is restricted to schools that are in districts with mill levies and are not need-based. The other thing is it doesn't appear to honor the mill levy restrictions that were adopted by the local school board. So for instance, they don't really look at whether the transportation fund mill was restricted or whether the school applying does or does not provide transportation. So there are just some technical details about that I find troubling, given the schools that do have such high needs and they're not eligible for it. So I'll be personally testifying against that. If I can testify for the board, great, but I understand that this is a last-minute thing that I'm learning about, and you may not feel comfortable with that. So, anyway, that's all I've got. So, all right, any other legislative updates? No? Great. Now let's take a 5-minute break. Hey, how's everyone doing?
I'm standing up, remember?
Richard, are you there? Okay, we're going to start back up. All right, our next item is a second information item 7.2, a strategic plan. Rob?
Thank you. Very excited to provide the board the update on where we're at in regards to our strategic planning process. And I'll be trying to control the computer from up here with this clicker, so it looks like Randy has got us squared away as soon as they bring this up. Just to give everyone an overview of this project, right now we're really in phase 2, strategy development. We started as an environmental scan, organizational assessment, analyzed those implications, brought back to you about a month ago some draft strategic long-term outcomes and strategic themes. Board provided some weighed in a little bit on those, but the idea was that we were going to take those back out to the community in a series of 6 forums to continue to see, even though we've taken a lot of input from the community, did where we land resonate and what didn't, and what adjustments needed to be made. And so the presentation tonight will share and talk you through the process and share with you what we heard from our community. Again, this is just a slide that shows where we are in regards to this process in the midst of phase 2. Again, just lots of data went into this, went into not only our drafts, but this whole process. My first 100 days, the visits within the community, the review of student achievement data, both qualitative and quantitative, the review of our surveys, and then the design session that we held with district and school leaders. And just another overview, and as I've been sharing, as we've been working with the community on this process on what the community is looking for and prioritizes really started last spring with the numerous meetings that were held in this community about what was important to this district and a leader. Also, I think holds true to what their priorities are and what it is that we hope to accomplish. And so between my first 100 days, surveys, the district review, and the design sessions, led us to January with a steering committee that drafted long-term outcome and strategic themes that you all have previously seen. And so we did that on the 22nd. After the 22nd, we held not only those 6 meetings, but an online forum where we collected 150 comments on the framework, in addition to the comments that we received in person. 120 members of the district leadership team provided us input. Parents on our district accountability committee provided feedback in February, and then we had over 200 participants. And so, as you can see, very wide range and a variety of engagement that a strategic plan would need. And so I'm very comfortable with the information that we've received and the feedback. And so, as we think again about our strategic plan, what are the components of a great strategic plan? A vision, mission, long-term outcomes, which is really specific, measurable results to achieve. This board, we've talked a lot about metrics and the importance of that, and that's a big piece of this, tied to the long-term outcomes. Strategic themes, which are the areas that we have to address to achieve those long-term outcomes, and then the objectives, how we would choose to address those themes. And then by developing strategic initiatives and action plans, that's how we make sure that this plan doesn't sit on a shelf somewhere, that is actually actionable, and that as an organization we're moving forward with the outcomes that we're hoping to achieve. During this process, we didn't touch the vision or mission. We felt like there was a very inclusive and comprehensive process to set these just a couple of years ago, and we feel like that these still hold true, and as a governance team, we spoke through that, and so our vision and mission remain the same, as well as our values. And so those are not things that part of this process were things that we adjusted. This is a copy of the draft strategic plan framework that we presented to you all on January 22nd in regards to our 3 priority student outcomes and our 4 strategic themes. And this is what we asked our community, our staff, our team to react to. And so what I'd like to do is go through each one of the student outcomes and the themes and share with you what we heard and then what action was recommended. All of the data that we collected through the 320 plus pieces of feedback was boiled up into these recommended actions, and then I'll share with you where we've landed. In regards to what we hear, in outcome 1, there was confusion about the meaning of engaged in outcome 1, where the priority student outcome was all students are engaged in challenging and relevant educational opportunities. There was confusion, and so the recommendation was reworded to emphasize that when this outcome is realized, students will have more access to opportunities, because I think that was the spirit of what we were trying to say. With outcome 2, there was confusion about how a student's highest potential would be measured. And so the recommended action from our consultants was to remove the phase so that every student reaches their highest potential, since it's already captured in the mission and vision. And we felt like that made sense. Confusion about which gaps outcome 2 addresses, and concerned that it's not reasonable to eliminate gaps. And I think we had a conversation about that at our work session on January 22nd. And so their recommendation is change the language to the reduced disparities in achievement, still within the same spirit of what it is we're trying to do, working towards making sure that all students are achieving. That was the recommendation. And that there is concern that outcome 3 that emphasizes college without consideration for other postgraduate pathways, and even some sequencing around college career life. There was some concern around that. And the recommendation was reword that with a little more of an inclusive phrase, postgraduate success, which we could further define through metrics or initiatives. As we think about the themes, we heard that, and we were happy to hear this, that themes 1 and 3 resonated with stakeholders. As we looked at the 300 plus pieces of feedback, overwhelmingly the recommendation was to retain the current language. There was some confusion that theme 2 was targeted towards schools and educators, and the action that was recommended was reemphasize schools and educators by revising the theme to begin with that phrase. There was confusion around providing supports in theme 2. There's a recommendation to revise the language to communicate the supports are for educators and schools, and it still always comes back to students. And that the word, in the last theme 4, the word guarantee did not resonate with stakeholders. I think the question was, how would you guarantee? And so the recommendation was to replace with cultivate. Now, when we think about overall feedback, I think that some of these won't surprise us as a governance team. The need for measurable performance indicators is clearly defined outcomes, and that's coming. That's part of the process. The desire for specific initiatives within strategic themes, that's coming. The importance of equity, which I think we've all heard loud and clear, and the importance of cultural competence as an overall feedback theme. And the actions that were recommended are over there on the right, and talk to the idea that we're going to be developing performance indicators. Our strategy teams will be designing the initiatives. We're going to make sure that equity is embedded throughout this plan across multiple factors and across schools and student groups, and that we need to make sure that as we think through initiatives, how are we addressing cultural competence across the district? How does that get weaved in? So with that, and hopefully you all can see this on your computers, because if you're looking at the monitor I'm looking at, you probably can't read it. But these are the changes that we have actually made. So our priority student outcomes, these are the things that we'll be trying to achieve with our new strategic plan. All students benefit from challenging and relevant educational opportunities. We've reduced disparities in achievement, and every student graduates empowered with the skills necessary for postgraduate success. And so if this strategy is successful, we'll be able to accomplish those three things. The themes, strategic theme 1 didn't change. Ensure all instruction is challenging, engaging, relevant, and meets the needs of all students. Strategic theme 2, we did some reorganizing, provide schools and educators with responsive and customized supports to best serve students. Strategic theme 3 didn't change. Harness the talent and passion of our community and families through communication, empowerment, and partnership. And strategic theme 4, we replace guarantee with cultivate a positive and inclusive culture throughout BVSD that promotes well-being of students, families, and employees. as we round out about what we heard, just these three ideas, there's lots of ideas that also came out of this process for strategic initiatives within each strategic theme. I think that we have a highly educated and engaged and in-tune community, and we need to leverage those talents as we think about what it is that we want to do and focus on. That we took all of those ideas and coded them, and those will be provided to strategy teams. And so strategy teams won't be going into these things cold. They'll already have a robust collection of ideas collected throughout our community that I think will be helpful and help accelerate the work that our strategic strategy teams will be doing. So, in closing, this is where we are in the process. The next portion of where we're going with this strategic plan is to train and support our strategy teams. Soon after that, we'll begin to develop objectives, measures, and initiatives. And then as we get into phase 3, we start to think about how do you phase in a quality strategy? You can't do everything at once. What are the things that, as a district, we're in a position to act on now or are our highest priorities? And how do you phase in initiatives with well-thought-out action plans over the course of several years to ensure that we don't strain the bandwidth of our organization and our district to the place where folks are so overwhelmed that they can't focus on what they need to do. And so that's the update on where we are with the strategic plan. The process, I'm very proud of the work that our team has done. They've worked really, really hard to work fast with urgency, but also be thoughtful at the same time and engaging within our community. And so happy at this point to answer any questions the board might have.
Okay, thanks so much. Who has a question?
I have a comment.
A comment, Kitty.
I just want to say I think you've done a really good job with listening to the input from the community and coming up with improved statements.
Sam?
It's very exciting. I just wanted to ask a timeline question. So the measurements that are developed, when will those come back to the board? It looks like maybe April or May. Is that?
No,
based on-
hopefully before that. I can get you all, and I can provide this to you on Friday, another detailed specifics on how you all will be engaged in the targets and metrics to make sure that as we set those, that those are metrics and measures you're comfortable with as we move forward. So I can get you
Okay.
a new timeline on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thanks to the team for all the work on it. It's great.
Kathy?
So there's just different terms. I was trying to track through this, and I get a little confused. Who was on our strategy teams?
So the strategy teams are being developed as we speak, and certainly can get you a list of those on Friday. And those are made up of school-based and district-based employees with expertise in the areas that are aligned to the strategic themes. And those are teams that our steering committee vetted and decided that would be on those teams.
And so on those teams, do we have representatives from all of the different employee groups, classified, non-classified, certified? Are they all included in the strategy teams?
So at this point, I can get you a list of those on Friday so you see who is included and not included. And if there's folks that we feel like we still need to include, we can certainly have that conversation. The teams haven't started meeting yet. We've just been developing those teams. I will tell you that one of the things that we want to be sensitive to is if you put too many folks that are in school-based positions on these teams, they may struggle to make the meetings, which can create a challenge, I think, when you're trying to get consensus on what there is to do. But certainly we'll share those with you all, and if there's input and feedback on what those teams need to look like. I think there's a right size for a strategy team to be able to consider and think through what needs to happen. I think if you get those too big, that it's hard to make progress, but certainly we can share that with you all.
We're not voting on the teams, that's,
No,
Yeah,
no,
okay.
no, that's right.
what else, Kathy? Any other comments? Okay, well, oh, yeah, there.
Hey, Richard.
Second, I thought it was someone in the audience.
I know,
so did I.
I'll take a comment from the audience. Okay. No.
All right, go ahead, Richard.
Just a couple of things. One, on the confusion about which gas outcomes to address. Outcome 2 addresses the concerns that it has not reasonable it is not reasonable to eliminate the gaps. How is that manifest? Where'd that come from? I mean, where is the confusion coming from?
I would say that, Richard, that it came from the 300 plus folks from the community we heard. You know, the feedback that we shared was the confusion around gaps. The committee felt, and our consultants felt like you could, by changing that to reducing disparities in achievement, and then creating metrics that would measure whether or not the opportunity or achievement gaps that we're narrowing those would be the best place to really define those and put a stake in the ground that these are important things to our district. But really through the metrics would be where we'd want to do that.
Mm-hmm. So closing gaps and opportunities, I mean, it's not like we're eliminating them, but I mean, closing them. I guess that's kind of similar to the disparity or the reduced disparities in achievement, because we're just trying to close gaps in the achievement and the opportunity that we provide for children. But just a comment. And then the other comment that I had, or question that I had, is how does this strategic plan resonate with the ROI that we were presented at the last work session?
It's a great question. As we start to think about our initiatives, what I think the board will see is that we are going to really parallel and align those processes. As we think about trying to start anything new, we also know that there's things that we need to stop doing. From a focus perspective, from a resource perspective. And so I'm really encouraged by the work of our team, Bill and Sam, who really have been tackling this and taking this on, to really run parallel paths to make sure that we clear the space within what we're asking of our people, and for the resources to make sure that we're focusing our energies on the right initiatives that are going to move these outcomes, that are going to ensure that every kid gets what they need from our district.
Richard,
Thank you.
You good, Richard?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you. And we'll move on to our action items consent grouping. 8 action items consent grouping. 8.1, approval of minutes February 12th, 2019 regular meeting. 8.2, approval of minutes February 12th, 2019 special meeting. 8.3, approval of revised minutes January 15th, 2019 special meeting. 8.4, 2019-2020 medical and prescription drug plans for employees. 8.5, acceptance of donation Broomfield High School. 8.6, acceptance of donation Mesa Elementary. 8.7, amendment to contract for a program inventory. 8.8, amendment to the construction manager general contractor contract for bond-funded improvement work at Mesa Elementary School. 8.9, approval of the architectural design and engineering services contract for bond-funded improvement work at Bear Creek Elementary School. 8.10, approval of the architectural design and engineering services contract for bond-funded improvement work at the Halcyon School. 8.11, award of contract for services, school improvement activities at Sanchez and Columbine Elementary Schools. 8.12, district indoor quality committee membership. 8.13, final site contract, content management system. 8.14, grant food service national school lunch program equipment, Colorado Department of Education 2019. 8.15, grant Justice High School Best Grant Capital Construction, Colorado Department of Education 19. All right, do I have a motion to approve the items?
When do I pull one?
Laura, do we pull before we do a motion to approve? Oh, yeah. Do you want to pull now?
I do.
Okay.
I'd like to pull 8.15, please.
Okay, so we'll discuss that later. Any other items board members would like to pull? Okey doke. Do we have a motion to approve the remaining items? So moved. By Kitty, second by Sam. Any discussion or questions about the items? Shelley?
Question about 8.12, the District Indoor Air Quality Committee. I can't remember exactly what the composition of that committee was supposed to be. It was pretty clearly defined when we set it up. But I believe there were parents on that committee, and it looks like all the eight new members that are pending approval are staff or other professionals in the field. And I'm just wondering what the composition of that group looks like now. And also, while you're coming up, Rob, I just had a question. As I recall, we signed a 2-year contract with Shaughnessy, Dr. Shaughnessy, for his consulting services on that. And I just wonder where we stand on that contract.
So, to answer your first question,
Mhm.
we're struggling getting engagement for the indoor air quality, but I've challenged our team to go out and do a little bit better job of advertising for those positions. So right now, it's primarily staff. Dr. Shaughnessy, I'm guessing we have 4 or 5 community members on that committee. But right now, we need to do a better job. We need to find more people that are interested in that committee. So we have new leaders, Dr. Gita Carroll, and then our new environmental manager, Bonnie Biggert, are leading that committee now. So I can tell you or reassure you that we'll have some engagement there in the next few months. And then Dr. Shaughnessy, that contract was approved in the last budget cycle. So right now where we are at is we're going back and addressing the post-renovation work that was completed in the first phase of the bond. So we will have that information by, I'm gonna guess, the fall of this year. So we'll be able to report back to the board on that first round.
Do we extend his contract?
We
Rob?
did.
And
Yep.
we did that with board, that was on the board
That is correct.
consent?
Yep.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Welcome.
So when you call in an absence, you get to say whether there's a respiratory impact of the.
Right.
Have we gotten data on what those reports look like?
We have pre-renovation data, and now we're still collecting post-renovation data. So when we get through this first phase, we'll be able to report back to you on what we're finding.
And we won't wait till all the schools are renovated. Will we get it kind of on a rolling basis?
We can do
Okay.
that. Yep. We'll report back.
Yeah, so, you know, Rob, all this started back when we had issues at Casey. And that's how this all came about. So I would say if you have schools, and I've, you know, read some emails where we had some air quality issues, that might be the place to start with parents who might be willing to engage in this.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll just add, we also received some emails about air fresheners, and there might be some interest there.
Right.
Okay.
And we spoke to a couple of those
You
parents.
did?
Yes.
They just,
So
yeah, I
in
know it's
that-
a big commitment, I get it.
Right, and that will be a policy that we bring back to you again in the fall of this year.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
Okay.
Is that it? All right, shall we call roll on the vote?
I had a
Oh.
comment.
Oh, you have another comment, okay, perfect, go.
I had a question on 811, the contract with University of Virginia. When I look through it, there's a lot of retreats, and I'm just curious what kind of staff and principal impact there will be during the year, or is it all supposed to happen during vacations and summer? I'm just trying to figure out, because it's not specified in the contract what that impact will be on the staff and the principal.
The big chunk of training's over the summer. There's typically 3 times a year that these trainings occur. Leaders will be out of the building, and I'll ask Robin to come up and maybe answer in more detail. Or we can get back to you on the specific dates of the training. I believe that we probably have those. Robin, do you want to just kind of talk about the dates on the training and the impact?
Yes, Dr. Anderson, I would be happy to. So you're right, the bulk of the work with the University of Virginia is in professional development, primarily for the leaders and the staffs of the schools. However, it starts with the training of the district team in March in Charlottesville at the University of Virginia campus, to be followed in June by 8 days of training for both the 4 members of the district team and the 2 principals. Then, a year from now, in January, the district team, the 2 principals, and a group of teachers from both Sanchez and Columbine will attend additional training in Albuquerque, followed by, the year after that, additional training and school visits, both locally and in the Albuquerque area.
All right, any other comments or questions? Okay, do you want to call the roll?
Benford. Fuqua.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gebhardt.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Sergeant.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so now, under 9 action items, we're going to talk about the item pulled from consent and grouping, which is 8.15 grant, Justice High School Best Grant, Capital Construction, Colorado Department of Education, 2019.
So I'd just like to pull that, and I'd like to make an alternative motion that the BEST grant be submitted with Boulder Valley School District, agreeing that if the BEST grant is provided in May, that we provide the match. And I can explain why.
But one sec, do we need a motion first?
And then if you're going to amend that, then that would be
Okay, so
secondary.
first we're going to get a motion to approve, correct? Can someone move to approve?
So moved.
All right,
To
second.
approve, no, what?
We haven't made, don't we need to do a motion on this first?
a
First
motion
and a
as it
second.
stands.
Yes, exactly. And then we're going to have discussion and an amendment. Does that make sense? Okay.
So if we don't like the way it reads, we wouldn't move to allow this, we wouldn't.
Yes. We're gonna have an amendment, correct, Melissa?
Agenda, that 8.5 as it
Right.
is, so you want to pull that to the attention of the board.
Right.
With a motion and a second.
And if you move to approve it, then you're moving to approve it the way it is.
Right, and then.
And then I can amend it.
Is that, but we should first move to approve and then she'll move to amend, correct?
Okay.
Yep, so second for
Yeah,
motion by
I moved to
Kitty,
approve.
second by Seon? Oh. You move to approve, yeah, okay.
And then.
And now
when do I-
discussion.
Okay, so I would move to amend. Is this the time to make the motion to? On the motion?
Well, she was
So-
gonna make the amendment and then discuss the amendment, but. We can, I think we can, either way.
Well, and I just want to say, because Shelley, you asked at the last work session, if, in the list of needs, where does this school rank? And so I sent an RFI on that.
Right, and I read that, and now I have other questions about this particular. So one of my questions is, where is the 80,000 that we're talking about right now coming from? Was that money allocated to Justice High originally in the bond? And if so, what was that originally intended for?
Yes, 80,000 was originally allocated, 180,000 was originally allocated to Justice High. They've spent some of those funds, they have 80,000 remaining.
Okay, and what was that intended for?
Utilities and kitchen improvements, if I remember correctly.
Okay. So now we're talking about using that money instead for supporting services?
As a match to get additional funding.
So they wouldn't get their utilities in their kitchen necessarily?
That would still be covered in the additional funding that they would get from the BEST grant.
If they did?
If they did.
And if they didn't, then this
Then
80,000
we
would...
would move forward with the work that was in the master plan.
Okay. And so I'm unclear, just if you don't mind, just give me a little history, like why we have this building that needs so much work and really isn't appropriate for the school. Like, how did that come about to start with?
We didn't purchase the building, Shelley. Justice High purchased this building. We weren't involved in that process, is my understanding. So the district was not involved when we purchased that building.
Okay.
So I can't speak to that.
And so now it's owned by this Phoenix Building
Corp.
Corp now. And I understand that that building corp was set up by the principal of the school.
That is my understanding.
And so if improvements are made to this building, what happens then if the school closes down and the building needs to be sold or something, and now we have taxpayer money invested in that building? Who does that appreciation go to when it comes to sale, the sale of
Building
it?
sale, the way I understand it, those proceeds then would go out to pay off any additional debt that's out there on the building.
And so then what happens? You pay off the debt, there's a building.
Yeah.
Well,
You
we
wanna-
have that arrangement with Peak to Peak where they own their building and we use bond money, our bond money, to make improvements. And so we have a history already of engaging in using our bond funds with a privately owned charter school. And I would assume that we could engage in the same kind of arrangement with Justice. So we
Well-
already have the precedent of doing it.
I understand that, but I'm not worried about the precedent. I'm worried about what happens if the school
But-
goes under. Peak to peak is not likely to go under. So I want to know what happens to the building if that happens. Like, what kind of agreement do we have about that, is the question.
Well,
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Richard.
I guess I'm not too concerned about Justice High going under or being closed, and if it's not making the grade, then we have the option of bringing in a new chartering group to run the school. I don't think it'll close.
Well, but I'm asking about the building, Richard. Like, if there's no school, what happens to the building if the building is owned by the principal, is the question. The peak-to-peak charter is not owned by the principal of peak-to-peak, I don't think. So I just wonder what arrangements are in place if that was to happen.
Bill, do you know the answer to that question? Sorry, I missed the question. Yeah. If Justice High was to dissolve, who would own the building after the fact? Ultimately, the way I understand it is that Justice High, the proceeds, you would sell the building, and the proceeds would go to pay off any debt that was owned by Phoenix Building Corp.
We would most likely write a contract around that. And it's possible to separate out parts of the building. I mean, it would be a unique contract
Right.
to do that.
Just on this topic, my understanding is we own part of Peak to Peak.
Mm,
And is there any reason we couldn't do that with Justice if we go forward with this?
Because I remember there was some while the construction was happening, we had an interest, and then that changed over time. So I understand your question, and with the building,
Yeah.
I don't think there would be anything automatic that would come back to the district when it's owned by a different entity.
But as part of the contract going forward, we could negotiate that we would protect the money that we would be putting into it, just like we did at Peak to Peak. I mean, not exactly, but we have precedent for doing that. And I get that it would be complicated and we don't have an answer to it, but we could certainly make that a condition of going forward before we would invest more money into it.
Yeah, I will say, we've discussed this at length with CD, and they felt comfortable with the Phoenix Building Corp., the amount of debt they have with the mortgage, et cetera. So we have discussed it with them. They felt comfortable moving forward with it.
Well,
So
it's
we
just not
are-
a question of the amount of debt, it's a
Right.
question of who owns the building.
That's right. And right now, Justice High Phoenix Building Corp. owns the building.
Yeah, well,
We do not have ownership in it.
right, I would not be comfortable using taxpayer dollars to improve that building without us having a stake in what happens to that building.
So we could discuss that. Yep.
Then I'll go to Kathy.
Yeah, I guess I would say that if the district can guarantee that we have a contract in place that, where we could recover this, you know, even if it's $80,000 at this point, that we're investing in it, then I would be okay with this motion, especially since it's already been allocated to them, right?
Right.
It's already been allocated. But I think that it would be, is there, what is the time, why is this on the consent agenda tonight? I mean, what's the timing of this?
So the timing is this month. The application has to go to the BEST board by, it was actually the 25th. So we're a day late right now. But we wanted to get this to you. We're fine. We've received that approval from them. But yeah, we're up against the end here to get that in.
Okay.
then
And so
ult-
could a contract be worked out before?
Yeah, ultimately, so we won't know if they approved until the end of April. Middle of May, I'm sorry. I was told the end of April, so middle of May. We won't know which direction, so we have until then to be working out any details, and then if it's awarded, we'd have everything in place.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Rob.
Who owns Boulder Prep?
Half and half. We own a portion of it, and they own a portion of it.
So we have another precedent where we put money into the charter school, and we worked out an agreement so that we could, if we had to recover some of it, we could recover that. So we have two precedents with our charter schools where we've done this.
I'm just saying Kathy's not in place.
No, I know, but we
Not
have
saying that
time.
it
That's
couldn't
all.
be.
And I agree, Shelley. I've had a lot of anxiety sitting on the best board of putting public dollars into privately owned facilities. That's an issue that we're still trying to figure out. So I totally agree with you on that. I'm just saying I think we could get there because we have precedent for doing it. That's all I'm saying. So, Donna had something. No, I'm not.
Not yet.
I'm just confused. Sorry, I'm tired and had a long day. If we vote to approve this, then I don't get to amend it, correct?
Yes, you better amend it soon.
So I'm just trying to figure out where procedurally I can make my amendment. That's,
Well, I was giving you the floor
okay.
to make your amendment.
So my amendment is that I move to amend 8-15 to allow Boulder Valley School District to put in reserve the required match from the state, which is approximately $1 million. And if the best grant is awarded, that we would then be able to fulfill our match. So that's my motion. And assuming that we have in place the contract that we just talked about so that we protect the public investment in the facility. So that would be my.
Laura, did you get all that?
No, I cannot.
I can, no, but I can write it up for you if it goes, if we,
No, we're gonna, gotta get a
Second
second.
that amendment?
You second it, Richard?
Yeah.
Okey-doke.
What was it?
The amendment was, so this basically is saying, we'll put in 80,000 and we hope Best gives us 2
Right.
million. She's saying
1 million.
1 million from BVSD, 1 million from Best.
and I can explain why now that there's a second.
Okay, and there's a second from Richard, and now go.
So I just need everyone to understand what Boulder Valley School District is asking because I find it unconscionable. That $1 million that we are asking from the Best Board will come from districts like Sanford. I looked up the numbers. Sanford can raise $22 per student for 1 mil. Boulder can raise $223. About 1,000% more we can raise in Boulder. So what we are asking is that we ask all the poor school districts to forego their improvements so that the Boulder Valley School District doesn't have to make their match for their neediest school and their neediest students. I actually, as you can tell from my voice, I've been thinking about this and struggling with it for a really long time because I can't believe that we would treat those students that way. And that we would ask the state, when we have over $600 million in bond proceeds, to step up and give us $1 million when that money, like I said, would come from very needy rural school districts. And I can't believe we would ask that. And so what I'm asking is that in a school that's 80-some, 90% free and reduced lunch, 60-some% Hispanic, that's doing really good work, that's already come and explained that they've never come and asked for bond money from us. When they have football practice, the kids have to actually change in the open out in the park because they don't have a place to change. This is our last stop for these kids. There are kids who go to this school that were at Arapahoe that can't make it at Arapahoe, that were at Boulder Prep that can't make it at Boulder Prep. This is the last stop for these kids, and I believe that we need this program. I believe we need it where it is because that's a very low-income part of Boulder, and those kids can get there a lot easier. They have the outdoor recreation facility, which which Arapahoe doesn't have, which is really important to the social and emotional needs of those students. And if we can't step up and support them with $1 million out of our $600 million, shame on us.
Yeah, I have a question. So if we passed this as it's written, we're asking for an extra $1 million would that come from the BEST fund?
Yes.
Okay.
And that money is.
Right, I get that. They could go somewhere else. Yeah, I just wasn't sure where the $1 million would come from.
Well, it's $1 million match from us. It's $1 million from Best and $1 million from us.
Right, but we're asking them to waive the other million and for them to pay for it.
With this $80,000 proposal. Yes,
Correct.
that's what we're doing.
And this is the only project I'm aware of, and Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, where we could double our money in the bond. I don't think there's any other place where we've been able to double our money in the bond.
We haven't asked for any other grants other than some EV charging stations, et cetera. They've been minor, so yes, you would be
So
correct.
it allows us to double our money for justice.
That is correct.
And the only other school that's
Well,
applied for a BEST grant that I know of was Horizons, and they received that, and they had a very successful project
And the
and have reaped the
2006 one.
benefit.
Yep.
Okay, comments? Shelley? Sorry, Donna?
Oh,
You're
go
next.
ahead, Donna, I already.
I'm still a little confused. So 1 million, I'm all for helping these students. I worked in Justice High, I worked at Boulder Prep. I know their needs. But I also know in our district, we discussed at the work session, the needs of kids to, maximize their learning with the air conditioning quality. And does it mean that $1 million will come out of our school district funding or monies that could go into other areas that we've identified as very important?
Yes, this is just a question of how we prioritize that. So yes, that $1 million, I don't know if it would come out of bond proceeds or one-time reserve dollars, but we have the money. It's just a question of how we choose to allocate it.
So my biggest concern about this is that I heard about it last week and that the application was due today. And that's an issue for me because we have a really clear process for bond dollars. And I feel that there's lots of need in our district. There's no question that I'm supportive of Justice High and their students and recognize the hardships they have. My question is why is the district recommending this because they weren't last week to do the $1 million? And what is the process for skirting our bond money process? It hasn't been prioritized for the 5 years I've been on the board. This is the first I've heard of it. And that is hard for me to understand. When do we break out of the process? So that's my biggest struggle right now. And it really is not me saying, I don't really like the kids at Justice High. I'm just wondering, is this board going to be changing its bond dollars a lot on the fly?
Well, Tina, you and I have talked about this way before last week, so that's not a fair statement. And I don't think it's skirting the bond dollars. I've been on the CBOC committee, and what they're waiting for is a recommendation from us. And so this has come up now for at least the last month, if not longer. And so the conversation has been out there, and CBOC is waiting direction from the board on how to use the proceeds, so.
But usually they make the recommendation.
And I don't understand why it's gotten backwards, but that's how it's been. So CBOC has said they wanted to wait to hear what the board had to say.
Well, we make the final decision, and this school has been waiting forever. The timing has a lot to do with the BEST grant that's got to go in, and the money's there, and I think we should do the right thing.
And one more thing, this
For the
school
students,
district.
for the
Go ahead,
students.
Richard.
Huh?
Go ahead.
No, I said we should do the right thing for those students.
This district had a BEST grant proposal last year, and I don't know why it wasn't brought to the board's attention. I knew about it over a year ago. And they pulled it because it wasn't in the position that they think they needed it to be in. So if there's a breakdown in communication, I don't think it's Justice's fault, because we've been working on trying to figure out how to solve the justice problem for a while.
Yeah, let me address why we didn't sign it last year, because that came to me. So they submitted a same application for a very similar scope of work for $180,000. Grossly underfunded, wasn't designed, wasn't thought through. So I wouldn't sign it because ultimately that had to come with you, and I had to sign it before it came to the Board of Education. So that was the reason then. So right after that, we engaged an architect, Wold Architects, to do a full facility assessment. The reason we didn't do an assessment out there at the beginning of the bond is because they did not own the building. So they bought that building in July of 2016. So that's when all of this started coming up. What were their needs? So this was never funded. So I just want to make sure that's understood, as they did not own this building when we passed our bond in 2014.
And can I ask one more quick question? So Rob, after you've done this, do you believe that you have a solid plan that you feel comfortable with going forward with a best grant application with the engineering you've done and the architectural review and all of that?
Well, the needs are, yeah, they have critical needs. They have needs that need to be addressed in the next 2 to 3 years. So do I feel comfortable with the plan that the architects put together? Yes.
And that it addresses, I get that none of these will address all the needs, but does it address some of the major needs? The plan
Yes.
that, okay.
Yes.
When did we put the wiring in?
It feels like it was done 2 summers ago, possibly. So IT infrastructure, they purchased those
Yes,
services from us,
because I was
yes.
out there trying to help them at one point with that, but and how did we fund that?
Through the bond.
Yeah, I have a lot of the same questions you have, Tina. I don't, this $1 million just isn't money laying around. This is money that's coming from somewhere else. There's definitely a trade-off here, and I don't understand how doing this at this point fits at all with the CBOC process that we've established. I would like to know what schools aren't going to get the money that we've agreed that they will get by making this decision. And I don't think the board should be making one-off decisions like this at the last minute. CBOC makes these recommendations and comes to us. This would be a very unusual departure. And I just also wonder, Kathy, like, do you still sit on the BEST board?
Yeah, so I'm going to recuse myself. And we have another, from the whole process, once the application is submitted, I'm out of it, and so will Scott Stevens, who we just recently hired. He will also have to recuse himself.
Well, it seems like maybe you should recuse yourself from this vote as well, since you're also on CBOC and you're on the BEST board. I feel like this is highly unusual in many respects, and I'm not comfortable at all. And it has nothing to do with not
Ellie?
appreciating those justice kids
Kelly,
and what
I
they need.
don't vote on CBOC. I attend as the board representative.
Well,
I
that's what
don't
I
say
mean.
anything, so I don't think I need to recuse myself because I want to stand up for the kids in one school. I do not think that there's a conflict there, that I attend and listen to the conversations. You hear the same thing from CBOC and I fully report back.
Well, this is just the first time, well, I heard this for the first time in the work session, and I heard that VBSD staffs make recommendations about how to spend the money. And I heard us agree that we agreed with those recommendations at that work session. I don't know what would change a week later, or 2 weeks, or however long it's been.
We didn't take a vote at the work session, and I don't know, because I'm not part of the voting members of CBOC, why we didn't do it the way through CBOC, but I understood that they wanted to bring this to the board. I can't explain why, because I'm not the chair, I don't have any voting, and I haven't been going to the meetings that long. I think I've been going maybe 3 or 4 meetings is all I've gone to.
I'm just not comfortable with a last-minute decision like this.
I'm uncomfortable. I was fine with the 80,000, and then the letter came through today from TJ, and it was a surprise. And then tonight, it reminded me of when CTE came to us and said they don't want any money, and then the next meeting, it was, oh, yeah, we do want money. And it just seemed like a quick rush decision, so I'm hesitant to be on board with this, not because of the building's needs, but because of the way it came about.
Well, let's just be really clear. If we don't do this tonight, then we lose this opportunity. And that puts, I assume that then we'll go forward with just some coats of paint and some minor repairs in a facility that needs a whole lot more, that we've already documented needs a whole lot more. And so sometimes when grant opportunities arise, you have to jump up and seize those. Is the timeline ideal? No, but that doesn't mean we have all the information we need tonight to make this decision. We know what is needed. We know that the plan is solid. We know that we have the money. Yes, Shelley, it doesn't come from everywhere. Yes, we have to prioritize. I'm just advocating that we prioritize this school and these children, and we will find other ways to meet some of the other needs as we always have.
I don't think it's true that we have all the information we need. I don't know which schools are not going to get what that we promised them right now. I don't have that information. I would want that information. I also feel like I agree that Justice ought to have a better facility, just like any facility that's not meeting the needs of the students that are in it. And I'm wondering if there's a better way to do this, if we can't find a better facility, instead of putting money into this place where I'm not even sure who's going to benefit from the improvements still. I mean, peak to peak is not one person owning that school. It is the school owning that school. It's not a person owning that school. So I think it's a very different situation. And I feel like a lot of things need to be worked out before we make a decision to give them $1 million.
Well, the other thing I would tell you, just one second, Richard, is that all I'm asking for tonight is that we say that if the grant proposal goes through and it's granted by best in May, we have 3 months to figure out the contract. We have months to figure out the other questions. And even if in May, then the district decides to pull back, if you don't have the match, then we're not going to get the grant. So it gives us time. If we don't do this today, then we've foreclosed all possibility of having those conversations and having that additional money. So all I'm asking is that we put that money in reserve. We may not even get the grant. And if we don't get the grant, then we're going to have other decisions to make. But all I'm asking is that for the next 3 months, we say we're going to go forward and see if we can get this grant. And if we can't, then like I said, we have other options. So that's all I'm asking for right now. I'm not asking that we commit it. We can make that decision if we commit the money, if and when the grant is granted.
Richard?
No, I just had a question because you mentioned that TJ was going to be the owner, Shelley. How does that play out? I mean, I thought Justice High was a charter school. Don't they have a board?
I don't really know what they have, to be honest, and that's another reason I'm not comfortable with this. I know that he set up the entity.
It's part of the contract.
He set up the entity that owns the building, and so that's all I know. I don't know who else is involved with that.
Well, it would be the board, right? The board of the Justice High School that would.
Does anybody know? I don't know, Richard.
I couldn't find the board on the website, so I don't. But there was a signature.
Justice High has a board.
Okay.
I don't know who the board is of the Phoenix Building Corp.
Oh, that's a.
Which we could find out during this time period.
Yeah.
Help me understand, Kathy. If we don't approve, why not the way it's already set up on the agenda, the 80,000? You're saying if we don't approve the 80,000, we won't get the 1 million?
We foreclose the opportunity to go to, I mean, they'll still send the application to BEST, but if Boulder Valley School District goes in front of the BEST board and says, we don't have the match, that is an embarrassment. So all I'm asking for, Donna, is that it gives us time over the next 3 months to see if we can work this out, to see if we can work out the $1 million, the ownership, and get a plan in place. Because what I can tell you is that the BEST board meets the middle of May, okay? They'll decide whether we get this or not. If they decide we don't, then we have another decision to make about what we want to do about justice. If they decide we do, then we can decide at that time, do we have the things in place that we need to be able to go forward? We will have had time to negotiate a contract. We will have had time to answer questions. And I've seen grants go down because the match doesn't come through. So this, by going with my motion, it allows us the time to figure out these questions and whether we can actually improve justice. And so all I'm asking is that we make a commitment to have that discussion if and when we get the BEST grant. That's all I'm asking. And if we don't do that tonight, we can't have that conversation.
So one question, just maybe Rob, is why are we seeing this BEST grant? I feel like why are we seeing this so late? Because I feel like as a board, we were introduced to the concept last Tuesday. And I feel like these grants were noticed before then. And then my other question is BVSD going for the grant or is Justice High going for the grant? Who goes up and shows up and does all that work?
So I'll ask Rob to address the piece of the grant and kind of the timing on that.
So timing, we followed our typical process. So when we rejected their grant last year, we went out for RFP for architects. By the time we selected architects, went through the assessment process, went through design, engaged their community, got contractor estimates, here we are. So it's just the length of the process that it's taken us, and it's probably my fault for not keeping you informed as we've moved forward with this. When we talk about, what was your second question with?
Who goes, when we're saying BVSD goes, or is it's a charter school, so does, and we don't own it, so does Justice go to the best board, or do we go to the best?
Justice would go to the best board and make the case of why they should get the additional funding. Ultimately, they would make a case of they cannot fundraise for this funding, they don't have mill levy dollars, et cetera. So that would be their argument. And I believe that was outlined in the consent agenda item that was given to you.
Not sure who's doing what, which is fine, because I'm not familiar with this process whatsoever. It's all new.
Yep.
All right.
And the question then would be of Justice, why did Boulder Valley School District not share its bond dollars with you?
And my argument there would be is they did not own the building in 2014 when we passed the bond. I mean, that would be the argument, is this is acquired in July of 2016, and we went through this process to help Justice High out. So,
Okay, Shelley?
Yeah, so Rob, at the work session we had where this came up, I think we asked you directly the question, you know, would you spend $1 million this way? And you had a whole list of projects that you wanted to fund in addition to air conditioning, and you said that that was your preference to spend the money that way. That's still your preference?
to me, I mean, what's up for discussion is, are we using bond dollars? Are we using one-time dollars out of the general fund? If you're using bond dollars, you're taking away from something. So what I heard at the work session is we prioritized the number of items. What we said would be remaining would be to air condition the remaining 17 schools. So now what is not shown there is project savings as we move forward through the bond, interest earnings, et cetera. We still expect some proceeds to come into the bond. Do I expect those to be over $1 million? I do. So that is not, we have not calculated those dollars. I have a general feel of where I believe they are, but do I feel like there's additional money out there? But again, we're just chipping away at air conditioning. What I said at the work session is I think we can do 11 of the 17 schools. There's still 6 schools that will not get air conditioning. So we still have to find remaining funds to air condition those other 6 schools.
And do you feel like there's another solution to Justice's problems?
If they're staying in their current facility, no. They have
That's what I meant,
critical needs they need to address.
A different
I mean,
facility.
They have, and I've spent time out there, they have rooms that don't heat, they have portable air, or portable heaters out there. They have a fire alarm system that is grandfathered in, they need to bring it back up to code. They have ADA issues, they have security issues. They need roofs, they need windows, et cetera.
It doesn't sound like a place you would invest in normally.
Well, again, he's made that investment to buy the property.
I mean the school district.
It's not our building right now. So I wouldn't say yes or no to that.
Okay, Donna?
At one point, we had nearby neighbors complaining about some of the activities happening around the school. Is that still a problem?
It is not.
Kitty?
So I have a couple of questions. So if we decided to put in reserve $1 million from the bond fund, would we still be air conditioning the schools that we decided to air condition?
The 5 schools that
We didn't decide anything.
That's good point.
Okay,
Good.
that we talked about air conditioning. Thank you, Richard.
Good, Richard brings up a good point. We will be taking 5 schools to CBOC for action tomorrow night and be asking for their approval to proceed with those 5 schools.
Okay, and then if we decide, the next question is, if we decide to do this and put the $1 million, do we have to say it comes from the bond fund or it comes from the general fund? Do we have to, we don't have to make that
is your
decision tonight? So are you saying, Kathy, we don't have to decide where the $1 million comes from yet?
That's correct. My only point was we have money from bond premium, and we have money, one-time money in reserves, as we've seen, so we have money. I get it's a prioritization and how we want to spend it, but we do have the money. And it'll be a board decision if and when we get to there, where it comes from.
Shelley?
I feel like we should go through that prioritization process. And we should look at other schools that also need money and also want money, whose needs weren't met in our bond. And I feel like this is not the way we should do business. It should be thoughtful. We should all be in agreement on who gets the money. And it shouldn't be a last-minute thing. This is crazy. I'm not in agreement with this process at all. And it has nothing to do with Justice High. It has to do with our process.
The process complaints will end up in hurting Justice High.
say this evening?
We're up against a deadline, and I get that. So I think we can work out the other details over the next couple months.
What are you saying, Sam? Are you saying you're willing to commit $1 million to this without knowing what schools we're making a trade-off with?
I'm saying I want to meet the grant deadline and then have the discussion between now and the decision on the grant and develop the contract. I completely agree with you that if something goes south with that building, I want the taxpayer money to be protected. But I think we can discuss and work out those details over the next, 6 to 8 weeks. But we have a grant deadline that is the
But if the
deadline.
grant is approved, that means we have to put in $1 million.
That's right.
And we haven't looked at where else that $1 million might go.
That's right.
We haven't gone through that process.
Right. I'm prioritizing the kids at Justice High and trying to meet the grant deadline, and then we will have the conversation.
And,
Really?
and Shelley.
Yes, really.
What you have missed is that we still will have an opportunity to have a discussion if the grant is awarded before we commit the $1 million.
But
So-
it's,
Go ahead, sorry, Donna.
but isn't it possible the grant would be awarded and we would commit 80,000?
No.
There's no possibility.
Well, I'm not, I would say there's zero possibility.
Explain it again. Why?
Because the way the BEST program works is there is a match calculation, and it's based on the wealth of the districts. And so for the BEST board to say, we're gonna put $2 million into a school district that has chosen not to use its bond dollars and to take that money away from low-income districts across the state, I just don't see the BEST board doing that.
Well, they did it for Horizons.
I don't know what the match was back then, Shelley, I could look it up.
I think she got $5 million.
And I'm sure there was a match.
There was a match.
Of 5 million?
No.
So I have a question. Why don't we just pay for the whole 2 million on the argument that we're taking money from other poor districts?
The match calculation, what do you mean, why don't we?
Why don't we just not do this at all and just pay for it?
Well, the match calculation tries to factor in the fact that there are needs out there, and that if we maximize with the match dollars, we can make our bond dollars go farther, or we can make the state dollars go farther. So, and our match is reflective of the wealth, and so that's, I can tell you, we have lots of conversations around what the match should be, and how do you make it fair? And so that's why the match is as high as it is. There are some districts that have very, very low matches to match their wealth. And so the answer to your question is the match calculation helps address that issue.
I guess here's my question. If we don't get the grant, do you think we should pay $2 million to fix the building?
I think we should have that discussion later.
I think if it's so desperate, we should have been talking about this before.
Agreed.
I mean, that's where we could actually find $2 million if we felt like it. And that's what I'm really concerned about here, is that, are we only doing this because there's a grant? Or is there a need? And, I get it, and I'm pretty torn on this. But this is a tough last-minute ask. And I don't know why taking $1 million from other poor districts versus 2 million versus 0, which is probably the best thing, how do we weigh those things? And why wouldn't we be interested in this project if we don't get $1 million from the state? We do lots of projects without any help from the state.
All I can tell you, Tina, is that I'm sorry that the timing hasn't worked as well as we would have liked it to, and we can always go back and Monday morning quarterback. Should we have done it differently? Should we have known things? But this is where we find ourselves. And all I'm asking for is the leniency to be able to go forward into May, see if we get the grant and have the conversation.
I have a question. So what is the worst-case scenario if we put aside $1 million now, and we get the grant, and we have the conversations later about where is this money coming from, and we can't agree on it? So then what? We would just turn down the grant?
Yes.
Yeah, so it seems like it's not gonna hurt us to do this. And like Sam said, it helps make the grant deadline. And if we decide later on we don't want to put $1 million in, then we can just not accept the grant.
Exactly, and we can have all that time to answer these questions that we're talking about.
I think realistically, once, if they gave us $1 million, there'd be no way that people would say we shouldn't put $1 million in. I feel like it's, once you say this tonight, then you are committing $1 million without knowing where that money's coming from or what promises have been made to other schools at this point.
Well, I would vote against the $1 million if we couldn't figure out the contract and the way to protect those dollars. So I don't think that's an entirely true statement.
Oh, I'm talking about the money we're taking away from other schools, not just the contract. We don't know that right now. We don't know who's not getting what.
But your statement was that it's a done deal, and I'm saying I don't think it's a done deal, because there's a lot of things we'd still have to figure out to protect whether it's bond dollars or public dollars, they're all public dollars from our taxpayers. and
Right,
we
but
need
I'm
to
setting
protect
aside the fact that we can figure out the contract. I'm saying if we do this, you could potentially have this room full of people from schools who are no longer getting air conditioning because we made this decision tonight. It could be weeks of hearing about that. And there would be no way that you could sit up here and deny that we took away something that we promised.
Well, there's 120 students at Justice High. Many of them are low-income Latino kids, and we don't hardly ever hear from those particular folks. But let me tell you, if something like this happens and we don't approve this, you're going to hear from those particular folks, just like you would from any other of those folks that are waiting for their air conditioners.
And Rob, I don't think we promised air conditioning to some of the schools that we've already put air conditioning in. Isn't that true? Like Cole, for example?
I haven't, no. Ultimately, we're not gonna promise anything until CBOC takes action.
Okay, my other concern is, and this is, and I don't know how I'm going to vote yet, but we should probably really think about whether people who have grants get priority over people who don't. So I feel like this is being kicked off because there's a grant out there, not because we prioritized it with or without a grant. I don't think that's the best way for our decision-making. Grants are awesome, and I love that we do them. I love that there's a grant for some kitchen equipment, and I appreciate it. But it's funny to think that we're doing this, and yet we don't really have a backup plan. So we don't approach building needs this way.
But I think you, just understand the timeline here. We did an assessment 2012, 2013. We put together the master plan in 2014. We went out to voters, right? Voters approved this in November of 2014. They did not acquire the building until July of 2016, at which time, a year ago, they went for a BEST grant and asked for our signature. We did not approve it. Right there, shortly thereafter, by the time we got a architect on board, et cetera, we did a facility assessment. So it's not like we just forgot about Justice High. Justice High did not own this building. So I feel like you're thinking we made some bad choices along the way. We didn't make bad choices. They just didn't own the building. Nor would I go out to peak to do a facility assessment. They own the building, we would leave that up to them. Summit Horizons, where we own the building, we would do that facility assessment for them. So that's kind of the difference here, is they did not own the building when we put together a master plan. That's why our capital improvement planning committee did not prioritize it.
And overall, do you think this is a good building to invest in? Because we're going to become part owners.
If Justice High is making a long-term commitment to this building, then we need to invest in the building. Now, is that our responsibility, or is that Justice High's responsibility? That's the question. It's not my decision, that's your decision.
Okay. Donna?
It's unfortunate that they didn't consult with you or have you come out or look at the facility, because you might have said, someone might have said, this is going to need a lot of work. This is not your best option. And we had parents in this room pleading with us for the quality. They were being impacted by not having air conditioning. The learning environment is not appropriate for many, many kids. So it's a balancing scale for me as far as how many kids are impacted by this. And I get it that they have a yucky facility, but I wish that somebody had been able to inform them that this facility needs so much work.
First of all, that's not a board's decision for the charter school to tell them how to do it. But we also, Donna, we can't be doing this on how many students there are. We wouldn't be putting money into Netherland.
Shelley?
So, Rob, you said that we passed this bond in 2014. They did not own the building in 2014. They bought it in 2016. So isn't it the case that the voters did not approve money for this school? They could not have in 2014.
The voters approved $180,000 for Justice High School.
Right.
Yep.
They did not approve $1 million for Justice High School.
They did not.
So I don't even know what we're talking about here. The voters didn't approve this. CBOC hasn't recommended it. We don't have permission to even do this from our voters.
Rob, haven't we expanded the scope of things beyond what the voters approved?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
And we've done that through the CBOC process where they came to us and they made their case and the board voted on it.
Okay, Rob, anything you want to share with us? Jump in.
Certainly, and certainly appreciate the conversation, discussion, and I just want to thank Rob and his team for the work that they've done up to this point. And I think that the decision the board has at this point, and which would at our work session last week is the process where CBOC asks the board for direction, which is different than what typically happens from understanding, which it goes the other way around. Was what's the direction for the board on where we should spend the bond dollars, right? And so that conversation that we had last year, what the takeaway was that the direction from the board at that point was to invest in air conditioning. The question that Kathy is asking is not necessarily tied to bond dollars. She's asking for a match, and that's one-time dollars, which could come out of a reserve or could come out of one-time dollars within the budget. And so I think that depending upon how that's at least what I'm understanding Kathy is asking the board. So then the question would be, it not necessarily from the bond, because it doesn't have to be from the bond, it could be from somewhere else, is $1 million in one-time money an investment that the board would want to make into Justice High School? And I think that that's the question that's in front of the board.
Okay, so board members, okay, do we have a motion? Can you read the motion? Can you try?
My motion, as best as I can remember it, was to amend 815 to allow the grant application to go forward to the BEST board with a commitment to evaluate, with a commitment that we will look at providing this required statutory match. I don't know what the exact amount is, but it's roughly $1 million and some change, $1,087,000 or
$1,017,000.
$1,017,000. With the understanding that that match doesn't necessarily have to come out of bond dollars, it could come out of one-time dollars. And that we would have that discussion if and when the grant decision is made in the middle of May.
And I'd like to amend the motion. Contingent on reaching an ownership agreement with Justice High School.
And I'll second that.
And review of the finances and the mortgage of the building. That's it. Okay.
Well,
Just
wait,
say-
don't we have to do the first that amendment and then?
Yeah, I think we have to, do I have to, Melissa, do I have to, can she add an amendment to my amendment, or?
You just added an amendment to her amendment.
I did, well, I think that I can do that, but I don't know if you can do what I just did. Yeah, but you could say, can she just say, are you just gonna add on to what I did?
So you don't have a second yet, do you?
Oh, yeah.
On yours.
Right, so can I get a?
So you can get
Yeah.
some input,
This is
clarify your motion.
separate amendment
and then
from
have a second.
Kathy's?
I amended her amendment for the contingency on the real estate ownership and the financial viability of the
Okay.
charter. Do I have a second on that amendment?
I'll second that.
Okay, do I have, okay, and then Shelley, do you want to amend?
Yeah, I would say that it absolutely cannot come out of bond dollars, not that it's a choice between that and general fund money. And I also would say that we don't allocate this money until we fully examine the trade-offs, because if this is coming out of one-time money of the general fund, then there are things like screeners for dyslexia for every single kindergartner in this district that I want to weigh as a trade-off to this money.
Okay. Is there a second for Shelley's amendment?
I'll second.
Okay, I'm trying to follow the amendments. So,
No, I'm confused. So do we just have one big
we
amendment?
do,
Okay.
right? Well, we have
Vote
two.
on each one.
We're going to vote on each one.
Yeah,
Start
we have
with-
3 amendments.
Amendments, okay.
Right, okay. Because it gets too big, you might want to vote for one against another, and it,
I need to go to some training when we get into 3 amendments. There's got to be a class. All right, so do we want to call the roll on the amendment, which is
Shelley's amendment.
the one, it's the piled amendment? Yeah.
Repeat the intention of that amendment is that we not spend bond money that wasn't voted for by our taxpayers on this school. And also that when it comes time to make this decision, that we fully examine the trade-offs with other priorities.
And I feel like we do actually have a lot of one-time money, so I think that's reasonable.
But I'm going to vote against that amendment because we are singling out justice when we have exceeded the scope of the bond in many other projects.
The times we've done that, Kathy, in my memory, have been when we've allocated more money to a school that was already approved because we found out that the scope wasn't wide enough. And it was not a situation where the school was not even included in the bond to begin with.
This was included. Rob said it was included. The $180,000
Yeah,
was included.
$180,000 to
Yeah,
$1
so the
million.
voters did vote on justice, Shelley.
Yeah, 180,000. That's what they voted on. Yeah.
And somebody asked, Rob, we added some dollars to Centaurus, about $7 million at one time.
That is correct.
And can you clarify that a little bit? Because that kind of came in at the last minute too, didn't it?
I don't remember the timing, Richard, but we added $2.5 million to upgrade the track and field. And then we added another $4.5 million to address some facility issues within the interior of the building, such as the humanities area, cafeteria, library improvements, et cetera.
And then CBOC came in or was it the former principal requesting an additional $7 million or something like that?
That $7 million was to address what I just discussed.
And CBOC.
Okay.
And CBOC took action on that.
I'd like to ask Melissa if she thinks I need to recuse myself. I don't have a financial interest in any way, shape, or form in any of these, but I just want to address Shelley's question before we vote.
Well, I mean, that really is an issue for yourself. I'm not seeing one sitting here. I haven't looked at the board's policy, but it's really incumbent upon the individual board member.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Do we want to call roll on Shelley's amendment? Everyone? Yes? Okay, Laura, do you want to call the roll?
Yes, but do you want to make sure I have everything right first?
yes.
Okay.
Okay. I've got part of it. I may need someone to add some more. To amend 8.15 to allow the grant application to go forward to the BEST board with the understanding that BVSD is to put in approximately $1 million with the understanding that the match does not come out of bond dollars but could come from one-time dollars. Contingent upon reaching the ownership agreement with Justice High School and reviewing the finances and mortgage of Justice High and not spending the bond dollars that were not voted upon and fully examine the trade-offs.
Is that,
Not a very good sentence, but
I'm
I
not
think you put,
comfortable voting on all of this together, because I think we're voting on different things. The first thing is, are we or are we not going to put aside $1 million? And then after that would be, okay, are we saying we'll put it aside, but it cannot be bond money? And then the contract piece, I would like to see those voted on as separate amendments.
The problem is I won't vote on it without the contingency in the vote.
Right.
So
I mean,
that's what
you-
the amendment's for, is that I'm probably gonna vote in favor if I have the conditions on it. So I don't feel as comfortable with that order.
What if we voted on your amendment first?
You have to start
With
with
the-
Shelley.
But we have to start with Shelley's.
We,
You work
We
your way
have
back up.
we have to start with
Right.
Shelley's.
It's just, I think, Laura, you put some of Tina's into Shelley's. I think that's just where we got
Well,
confused.
no, mine isn't. You're not taking mine out. You're repeating what I put in and you're adding on, correct?
Right, but Laura put part of mine in the middle of yours.
Correct.
Instead, so Laura, it would go like this. We'd consider putting up $1 million if it wasn't bond money, and if we had a full discussion with the entire board about the trade-offs of taking that money out of the general fund before we do this, before we agree to put the match in. That's my part. And then I also agree with Tina's part, which has to do with,
Are you including it? So are your?
yes, I can include it so that it doesn't become 3 amendments.
But then if I vote against Shelley's, I voted against Shelley's,
Yeah.
can't you keep them separate?
We can keep them separate, okay.
Keep them separate.
All right, let's keep them separate. All right, so should we call the vote?
on
Shelley's.
just Shelley's.
Yes.
Okay.
Does everyone feel comfortable? Does everyone know what they're voting for?
I do. I would say I'm always comfortable with the full discussion piece, but I would like to leave open the option of using bond money. So that's why I'll be a no vote on this one.
Well, I think, Sam, that I would be open to that if we had gone through the same process that we went through, like, for example, with Centaurus. I mean, when Centaurus came back and said they needed more money, that was a CBOC recommendation, and we had a lot of discussion about that, if you recall. We didn't just, say yes to that. There was a lot of concern about it. We went back and forth with CBOC, and we're not doing that now. So that's my issue. We're not having that conversation.
May I add one thing? This will go to CBOC. Anytime we're using bond proceeds in another way, it will take CBOC's action. So if CBOC does not approve this, we would waive the grant. So I just want to make sure that's clear. Anytime we're requesting additional funds to be spent in other ways, we would take it to CBOC for action. It's just the process, and then we would inform the board.
That's a good clarification. Thank you.
So
That's good, yep.
So we
So
can't
then
really
if
do
CBOC
what we're
doesn't-
doing now.
really what you're doing now is we're not making any commitment. We're making a commitment on paper. We have the ability to pull this grant at any time.
CBOC.
So the grant from CDE. So if they approve it and we don't have the match, we'll just say we can't accept the grant. So between now and May, we have a lot of work to do. Got to get a contract in place. We got to get this in front of CBOC, et cetera.
And I will just make a point as you're voting on this, that I haven't conferred with Rob the amount of work around these amendments and what that would take, and so we'd have to consider that amongst other things as well, so.
Okay, so now do we feel comfortable calling roll? Laura, would you please call the roll? And this is voting in favor of Shelley's amendment.
Still,
I still feel like I
Wait,
have
Richard
something.
has a question.
no, if what Rob just said is true, then why do you need an amendment, Shelley?
Why do I need an amendment? Because I want to make sure that we've examined all the other things that we could do with that money, Richard, that we've been talking about sometimes for years before we make this decision. It has nothing to do with Rob's comment.
But you would go back to CBOC.
Well, apparently it has to go back to CBOC, which is good news to me because that's our process. So I think what we're saying is if CBOC approves this, then So your question is, would I take the bond part out if CBOC indeed improved this? Right? So I think that's a good question. I mean, I could say will not be used, bond money would not be used without CBOC approval and board approval when that time came. That's a better amendment, given what Rob just said.
So Shelley, would you withdraw, that makes sense, that's our process, but, so would you withdraw your other motion?
Well, I don't withdraw my motion about understanding the trade-offs. That's my main wish and desire here, is that we understand where else that $1 million could go. And I don't honestly think that's too much to ask. That we look at all the things we've been talking about literally for years, that we are now going to give money to based on, this meeting tonight.
But that's not your motion, so I'm just.
Yeah, that is my motion.
No, your motion is that we don't use bond money.
Withdraw your motion and restate it.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion and say that this $1 million that we would contribute would be only taken from bond money if approved by CBOC and by the board, and would only be offered up as a match if the board decides that it is a priority compared with other priorities in the district. I understand that that these kids need a better facility, but our kids also need to learn how to read. And I feel like we can't make that decision right now based on the conversation we've had tonight.
Does your motion contain the contingencies? The financial and the real estate ownership?
Yes.
Okay.
You need a second.
Okay. Someone needs to second.
I'll second.
Second by Donna, and question by Donna.
I want it read again. I agree, I just need to hear it.
Laura, you're being great. Thank you so much. Your patience is palpable.
Okay. I probably don't have this exactly verbatim. So, the whole amendment, to amend 8.15 to allow the grant application to go forward to the BEST board with the understanding that BVSD is to put in approximately $1 million. Now, this is where it gets confusing because I'm not sure if we're going forward with part of the bond money or not. So, with the understanding that the match does not come out of bond dollars, but would come from one-time dollars and contingent upon reaching an ownership agreement with Justice High School and a review of the finances and the mortgage and an examination of the trade-offs against the general fund. This $1 million that we would contribute would only be taken from bond dollars after consideration from CBOC, the board, and weighed against other priorities in the district.
There's a middle part that would come out.
Okay, what middle
That's-
part needs to come out?
Right before
That
you
last
talk about the
sentence was it.
contingency.
Yeah.
So in between putting the approximately $1 million and the contingent, there's some stuff about only from bond, that part is
Okay.
is not in there.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Richard, go ahead.
So
If that amendment fails, do we go to the second one?
this part.
Yep.
Because that comes at the
Okay.
So I have a question.
Donna.
Could we take a 3-minute recess and let Shelley write this down and hand it to you, Laura? It sounds like it's a little confusing because when you read it, it didn't seem to.
But that last sentence you read was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking that part out.
But I thought we were just voting on what Shelley said.
So it piles on to each other. So Kathy made the first amendment, Tina added to her amendment, Shelley added to her amendment, Shelley rescinded what she had originally said and changed it. Right?
But I just thought we were voting in reverse order on the amendment, so.
We are.
So the last sentence you said would be my contribution to this whole thing.
Okay.
So we're gonna vote 3 times?
Well, if the final one passes, that's the one that goes.
So,
If we pass Shelley's,
That's
don't we
how-
stop there?
That's how it stays, I
Yeah.
think.
Right, so my only.
No, we moved to mine.
No, yeah, then we
Right.
moved to yours.
Correct.
Right, so
This would be with
I'm just
including
saying that
Shelley's most
in order
recent
for
one.
it to come out of bond money, CBOC has to approve it. And I want to compare it to other things that we need that money for. Those are the two things I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying. What I don't understand is exactly what we're voting on. Are we just voting on
We're
if
voting on
we?
everything. We're voting to reserve the $1 million, we're voting to have the contingencies, and we're voting that CBOC approve it, and we have a discussion about priorities.
So we're having one vote.
Nope. And then if we vote no on that, we're gonna go down to my motion, which was to reserve the $1 million and also to have the contingencies. If we vote no on that, we go to Kathy's.
Okay, now I understand. Thank
All right,
you.
And my apologies, that's my
So
job.
I have a question for Rob. I'm worried that this amendment could carry on forever, because part of our job is weighing how we spend the money. And so when would you need to know to start the construction? So that we would have a deadline that we would have to have this conversation by, and that would have to go to CBOC.
We're gonna have to have a commitment by the time they approve the grant application. So if they approve the grant application, we're gonna have to make the financial commitment at that time.
Or right after.
Yep.
I think our deadline is baked in, because obviously we have to go accept the
Yeah.
grant.
Okay, so I just want to, so middle of May-ish.
And just a clarification from the boards, to I understand the implications to staff on what you're voting on. The idea that would be is if Shelley's motion is approved as amended, then we would have to commit to making sure that, that there was some type of comparison assessment between projects and the bond. If it were to be bond money, it would have to be approved by CBOC. This investigation into the financials of justice is going to take certainly some district bandwidth. And I'm just trying to make sure that those would be the two big things that you would want from staff by approving this, would be the commitment from us to make sure that we're laying out the information for you all to consider, the priorities. If it's bond, if it's not bond, then how would $1 million in one time compare to other priorities that are existing within the district? Right? And so, and so I'm just trying to understand the things that we would be asked for if this is approved, so we fully.
Yeah, and to my standpoint, we had the work session last week. We prioritized the remaining bond funds. So what we said at that work session was any remaining bond funds would go to air conditioning. So what I'm hearing tonight, if this is approved, is we're gonna prioritize $1 million to go to Justice High, which takes away from that air conditioning. I just wanna make sure that, to me, is.
If it's bond funding, but
If
there's
it's
also,
bond-
if it's one time, then
That's
the
right.
one time versus the vast priorities in the district, I'm just trying to get my head around how we would be able to deliver on what it is you're asking us to.
And
Why don't
Rob,
we-
you said there could be additional money still coming in that could go to air conditioning.
And also,
And Rob, to your point, that's part of what staff's already gonna do, is we figure out the budget towards the budget. I mean, we're gonna need to know what the prioritization is, so I don't see that being a whole lot of extra work for the staff, because we already need that to figure out how we're gonna, if and how we're gonna spend one-time dollars.
It just depends on timing. Right? It
We have
depends
to
on
approve a
timing
budget by June, and this will be mid-May,
and
so.
syncing this up with our current budget processes. I'm just trying to understand the scope of what's being asked of us. I'm not saying that we can't do that. I'm just trying to fully understand. So as you vote on this, we understand, staff understands, knows what's going to be asked of them.
and I'm not looking for an investigation on finance. I think that it would be better stated as, is there any risk, since we're becoming owners in this venture? So, not venture, but this school. That would be the.
So, I think, Rob, you make an excellent point. Like, so if this is coming out of bond money, and your recommendation is that it be spent for air conditioning, then we could expect potentially that CBOC would come back and say that. Because I'm assuming that you're voicing the opinion of CBOC when you're saying that. These conversations have already
Well,
gone on, right?
We have not met with CBOC since the work session, so that meeting will be tomorrow night. We're gonna outline what we discussed with the board at tomorrow night's meeting.
Right,
So-
but what you shared with us at the work session, I assumed was CBOC's general.
That's where I've been bringing CBOC along, is we've been telling them, we've been showing them a list of projects and how we would prioritize those projects.
Right.
And how we would utilize bond premium if bond premium became available, which it became available.
Right. So there's nothing we are doing here tonight that would necessarily influence CBOC's decision to continue on that path.
Ultimately, CBOC still has to take action. So they're gonna be on board or they're not gonna be on board. They might say, Rob, this is a complete surprise to us, therefore we will not approve it, which could happen. So, because this has never been discussed from using bond dollars or general fund dollars. Again, when we went through this assessment, this information has come out in the last month.
Right,
So we have not met with CBOC since the assessment has been completed.
right. Well, I appreciate your clarity on that, because it's getting a little confusing up here. And I feel pressed to make an amendment because I'm afraid something's going to pass that I don't want to happen, but the fact is I don't want any of this to happen. So where does that leave me with my amendment? I think I could withdraw my amendment,
Could.
and I could just vote no on all of this because that's really where I am.
You could do that.
Okay, I'm going to do that.
You're just going to withdraw? Okay, and Donna, you want to say something?
You can make an amendment, Donna.
No, I'm not going to make an amendment. I do appreciate your input, Rob. What I'm struggling with here is not only letters, but people at the work session and community members already thanking us for the air conditioning they think is going to happen. And this, to me, makes that something that may not happen if we go this way and CBOC money is used in another way.
The one thing I would add to that is when we left the work session, we will be taking air conditioning step by step. So we will be asking CBOC to take action on 5 projects tomorrow night, roughly $4.3 million. Then we're gonna analyze all of the temperature data, just like we talked about at the work session, and then we're gonna keep chipping away at this. Right now, what I told you is we believe there's about $12.9 million out there. That'll get us potentially plus or minus 11 of the 17 schools. Ultimately, I hope it's the district school to air condition all 17 buildings like we talked about. So where do we come up with those funds? So.
Okay, so do we get to vote on my amendment?
Yes.
Okay, great. If we go back, my amendment was putting $1 million in reserve, not saying where it's gonna come from, and contingent on an ownership understanding of any financial risk with the current ownership model.
Or the amended ownership.
Yeah.
I have one more question. So if we don't approve this, what are the options for Justice to get major improvements to their facilities?
We would proceed with the BEST grant with the 3.9% match that we have shown there, the $80,000. If it doesn't get funded, we would proceed with what was in the master plan, the 2 minor items, some utilities and some minor kitchen improvements. And then we would master plan their facility for them in the next bond, and we would proceed with that. We have not set any timing for the next bond.
Which is our process that he just described, our usual process.
Voting on your amendment, right,
I was
Tina?
gonna say that.
Okay, good.
May I?
Yes.
All right, Laura, can we call roll on my amendment?
Okay, here we go. To amend 8.15 to allow the grant application to go forward to the BEST board with the understanding that BVSD will put in approximately $1 million in reserve, not saying where it will come from, and contingent upon reaching an ownership agreement with Justice High School and a review of the finances and understanding of the financial risk and a review of the mortgage. I probably need to rearrange that.
Could you
verbiage.
strike the not knowing where it's gonna come from?
As I typed it, it sounded kind of funny.
I know, this was mine.
And this,
Okay.
and CBOC has to approve this anyway, so I don't feel a need to state that. Does any other board member have? Okay.
Okay, so I will read this again. to amend 8.15 to allow the grant application to go forward to the BEST board with the understanding that BVSD is to put in approximately $1 million in reserve and contingent upon reaching an ownership agreement with Justice High School and a review of the finances and mortgage and understanding the financial risk.
Yeah, that sounds fine with me. Okay, do you want to call the roll? Or any
I-
more discussion? Okay.
Okay. Benford,
No.
Fuqua,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Gebhardt,
Yes.
Marquis,
Yes.
Myers,
No.
Sargent.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, well, that was long. So we have 4 policies, 5 policies. Oh, right, so now we have to vote on, okay, sorry about that. So now, do we have a motion to approve? What?
Kitty and Sam had brought the motion forward. Now it's been amended, so you're going to vote on that amended.
Okay, so we're voting the same, so if you voted yes last time, you'd vote yes again. Kind of, maybe.
If
Okay.
you want this to happen.
Right, okay, so Laura, thank you, sorry about that. Do you want to call the roll?
Sure. Benford, Fuqua,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Gebhardt,
Yes.
Marquis,
Yes.
Myers,
It's about the process, so no.
Sargent.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, so we have 3 small policies and 1 big policy in consent, and we have a study policy. So, and I had been under the perception that JS was going to be on study again, so I apologize for that. I didn't catch that. It is, what? Yeah, okay, so, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so I think we all thought that was going to be on study. We do have people in the audience who've waited for 4 hours, but on the flip side, it's almost 10. So, what do you all want to do?
Midnight in Florida.
It's just getting fun there.
We heard you yawn.
I would like to just vote on the first 3 with my sincere apologies that I didn't know the justice was going to take that long and put the other one on study.
There's no sense of urgency on these technology policies?
We've been working on them for a while. So I think that I'm looking at staff, any of the negative implications if we, yeah, we'll be okay.
Because we're pushing this out to another 2 weeks. We're not meeting next week. Shelley?
So, clearly, the parents have issues with this policy. It still feels like there's some things that we could strengthen in the policy. So is it going to come back to us exactly in this form, or is there going to be more work done on it in the next couple of weeks?
My initial reaction would be that it would be coming to you as it is today. Because we would want, if it's on study, we'd want to hear, and continued discussion and board input on what that would look like. So if it would come back to you like it's presented today, that's how it would come to you in 2 weeks.
But a study.
Yes, correct. We can certainly move that to study. I think that in our conversation at our last board meeting, my understanding was that our cell phone policy would go to study, but I didn't differentiate that on JS. But again, we can certainly do that.
So I had feedback for tonight and questions. Should we email that to you for the next round, or? Yeah. So I had questions and some questions for tonight, and I don't know if I want to wait for 2 weeks and then bring them up then and then go another 2 weeks. So would you rather I send those concerns over via email or no?
It's a pleasure of the board. I think that there's value in the discussion.
There's certainly value in the discussion.
Right, and so to get separate ideas, some of those ideas might be conflicting ideas. depending upon what you send me. I don't know what that would look like. And so then it would put us kind of in, that's why I think the discussion on study is the right place. Certainly you can send whatever it is that you feel is important. We can consider that, and then take a look at it from there.
Okay.
I heard her say questions, not ideas, and so I was supporting getting questions answered prior to discussion.
Certainly, we can answer. If it's strictly questions, it's not amendments or changes. It's just questions or clarifying questions. We could certainly do that.
Kitty?
So I'm just wondering, procedurally, I can't say that at 10 o'clock at night. We just pull 10.4, vote on the consent, and then talk about 10.4.
I think so. Is that right, Melissa?
I'd like to pull 10.4.
Okay.
Pull it, move it down to the policy action, which you wouldn't have to take up tonight.
Okay. So
And you
then,
could let that come back on study.
Do we need to
But then you
vote-
would take action on the other 10.1, 2, and 3.
okay. So, can I ask for a motion to approve those three?
So moved.
Second. Shelley? Laura, do you want to call roll? And this is on 10.1, 10.2, and 10.3.
Benford. Fuqua.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gephardt.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Sergeant.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, and then for the one that's on policy action and the one on policy study, do we need to do anything, or can we just say we're adjourning now?
Well, if nobody makes a motion, then it won't come forward.
It doesn't
and
come
then
forward, right?
Staff has said they'll bring it back.
Perfect. Okay, and shall we move to agenda setting? No. They're both coming back as study next time.
Okay.
Yes. And my apologies. All right. Any agenda setting items, board members?
Yes, I'd like to put the assent relinquishing to CSI.
Okay, so I will, and I got that email today, so I will look and see where we can put it and also find out what legal advice we can get on that. So that'll be the first step. Okay, any other items?
I want to put the biliteracy seal on the agenda.
So, as a study item, did you do the RFI already?
I did.
Yeah. Okay. Laura, do you want to put that down as, for agenda setting? Okay.
Richard, do you want it as an information item?
Information item.
Okay. Information item, okay. Board members, anything else? Okay, with that, I'd like to adjourn the meeting.